Welcome to the Shunned podcast, where we expose religions that use shunning as a tool to control people. I'm going to actually start this one out with a pretty big announcement. I hope that it's something I can get some support behind. If you're a member of the Facebook group, you already know this, but my wife and I have sat down, talked about it, and made the decision that I'm going to go full time with my activism work, trying to help people that are leaving these destructive groups. My wife has seen the impact that it has made on the lives of people, and she wants me to do more of this. I also have a large push from others to do more of this, and I want to help more. I get emails all the time from people whose lives have been changed, whether it's through the podcast, through the Facebook group, the Shunned Recovery Project group, just people that I've been able to talk to afterward through coaching. People need help when they come out. And we have a lot of activism around, the doctrine of the Watchtower and everything. But I like to feel at least what I do is a little bit different. It's about helping the people as they come out, also telling stories which help people to feel less alone. My wife's going to then, keep working hard so she can earn enough money to get us by. I am therefore going to do this. And of course, all the work that I do relies on your donations, your support. I know that sometimes people feel like they can't give enough to make a difference, but I have thousands of listeners. And if everybody just gave a couple dollars or $5 or whatever, depending on how many would participate, I could do some really cool things. If we want to have nice things, somebody has to do it. And nice things always cost money. It's easy to think that, others are probably supporting, so you'll get around to it someday, or maybe it's not really needed. But the truth is that less than 1% of listeners support the show. So we have some room to make a difference if we all come together. For a few dollars a month, you can have somebody like me working full time to benefit this community. Right now, I'm putting my time and my own money into it. I actually have a certain amount set aside. That amount is my runway. If that runway runs out, then all this goes away. Maybe I can continue doing the podcast on some level, but if I have to go do other things, I'm not going to have time for this anymore. So I'm hoping that with your support, we can really make a difference in even more people's lives. Maybe take a little of the pressure off of Jenny as well, as she's trying to earn enough to get us by. And of course, I'm doing some things as well, some little projects, but I need time to build some of these things. So let me tell you about some of the things I'm working on. First of all, I have plans to create a website to help people that are leaving the witnesses to find more help, and to actually help therapists and those in helping professions to be a better help through videos and information that will help both sides to communicate more effectively. I'm also working on a project to release a bunch of new episodes to kick off the new decade in January. 2020 is the start of a new decade. It's kind of cool when you think about it, but it's also, what have we done with 2010 to 2019? So, it is, it's a time of reflection, and I want to help a lot of people reflect on their lives. So I'm also working on a 50th episode that's going to have updates from previous guests from 2017 and 2018. I also have some special topical episodes that I'm planning to produce with help from others. One on sex and Jehovah's Witnesses, and not just Jehovah's Witnesses, but ex-Jehovah's Witnesses is a topic that isn't talked about a whole lot, but you can't live in an environment that shames normal human sexual interaction as much as the witnesses do without it causing some issues. And so I want to talk about people's experiences. Additionally, I'd like to have an episode about success for those who have found particular success in various areas to speak out. It might be something we can learn from. So some of this may be used as a fundraising drive, and I may give them first to those that support what I do. So, this is a good time to join the Patreon. I'm also talking to somebody about releasing my original podcast, This JW Life, in Spanish to help more people out there, because, that podcast has helped a tremendous amount of people. I don't even advertise it much. I might mention it on here, and I still get like 1,000 people downloading it a month. So, there are people who are being helped by it. I get emails from them. And if we had this in Spanish, it's because it's a limited series, we could help a lot of other people. I'm also working on a plan to try to create more in-person meetups. There's resources I think that are needed that would help in developing a program that would inspire more of these, in-person meetups. So I'm working on that. I'm also working and spending my time getting certified in certain digital marketing skills so that I can help all these things come to the fore, so that when, people go and search on Google for Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, apostates, and other such keywords, that they might find our information and actually get some help. So go to patreon.com/shunned. It's Patreon, patreon.com/shunned, and sign up for whatever you can spare. It doesn't have to be a lot, but it adds up. And if we work together, because I have thousands of listeners, we can actually make a difference. Somebody told me the other day, I hadn't really thought about it, but how did Watchtower start? It was through people with education and money. They had the funds to start something. They organized and they did something big. Of course, it's not something big and good, but it's something big. And, imagine what we could do if we got together and, pooled our resources to do something big and good, something that is changing people's lives. I know this matters because I get email after email from people that have been helped by these different things. And I spoke at that conference in New York City. I met the founders of organizations like the Ex-Muslims of North America and Footsteps in New York. And discussing these things with them and some of my goals, as they kind of pointed out, in the end, somebody has to be the one to step up, and I will do so. So go to patreon.com/shunned, and let's do something here that actually changes lives. How much money and time do we give to Watchtower, knocking on doors, donating to them, trying to help people, and truly helping nobody? This is work that is actually helping people. And, if you're one of those people, then you already know that. So, let's see what we can do, and hopefully we can get together and do more to support people. If you want to work with me one-on-one as you wake up, or try to get mentally and emotionally to a better place after leaving, I have a new site for coaching called storyworkscoaching.com. It's all about story and working on it. So Storyworks Coaching, the goal is to work on the story that we lived, the stories we were told that we probably internalized and now tell ourselves, the roles and patterns that we play out, and to live a better story. There's actually a button on each page where you can literally put yourself on my schedule for low-fee coaching sessions. In November, I'm even doing a Pay It Forward campaign. So you can sign up for some coaching and I'll donate a free session of the same amount to somebody that can't afford it. So if the life you're living isn't worth the price you're paying, reach out and let's talk. All right, now for what we're all here for. Let's talk about Matthew. We're going to meet Matthew from Australia. For a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses, they find themselves just kind of like riding the wave, doing what they have to do to get by. They may not ever really, quote, reach out for more and more privileges in the congregation, but just kind of seek to make it through from one day to the next. Matthew was one such J-Dub, trying to get by, trying to make his very serious Jehovah's Witness mom happy as a kid, trying to keep his head down and not to be noticed. One day, when he had his own children, he realized that he couldn't make them live that same existence that he had lived, and things had to change. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet Matthew.
Hello, my name is Matt. I'm 43 years old. I was a former Jehovah's Witness, and I am shunned.
All right, Matt. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? How'd you come in the religion?
I believe it was my auntie, my mum's sister. She was a witness, and at this time my parents were separated. I think I was probably they separated when I was about 4 or 5. My parents both had issues growing up. My dad was an Italian migrant. He arrived in Australia, I think when he was 4 or 5, couldn't speak any English, and there was no integration back then. He was just chucked straight into an English-speaking school, even though he couldn't speak English. And my mum, they were also migrants. They had from the UK, they had 2 girls, and then my mum and her twin were born in Australia. But I think when they were about 4 or 5, their older sister, who was about 11 at the time, died. And that really shocked the family, and it sent it into a bit of a spiral. So they both had a pretty much rough upbringing. And I think my mum pretty much married the first guy that came along, which was my dad. And by the time I was, I think, 4 or 5, they'd separated. So, yeah, so Mum somehow had got in contact with her sister, and we were actually at a Catholic school at this time, and I was starting the Holy Communion and that sort of thing. And so Mum started going to the meetings, and we got moved between Mum and Dad quite a bit, so it's a bit hazy when we were living with Mum for a bit, and then we'd be shipped off to live with Dad. And I think when Mum really started going to the meetings and learning the truth, she set Dad like at a watchtower and awake, and Dad agreed that he would read it, and then they got back together.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, wow. So he started reading the magazines and then decided to have a cohesive family again.
Yeah. So, but in the meantime, they both had different partners and stuff while they were separated, and it was just Mum did it for us kids. You know, I mean, I think they both probably did it for us kids, but it just, they shouldn't have got back together. They should have just stayed separated. But it was just too many issues coming into the household. So, yeah. Yeah,
it is unfortunate that sometimes, people say, stay together for the kids or whatever. But, a lot of times the kids know there's an issue there. Kids aren't stupid. Yeah. they can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for yourself, what did it mean to you as a kid? It sounds like your life, how old were you again? About when they started studying and everything?
I think Mum wasn't baptized. Mum was studying. So I think I was in about grade 3 over here. So that's probably 9, 8.
Yeah. It was about the same age I was. Yeah.
Yeah. So they got back together, and then, I think Mum got baptized. Dad studied, but he was a smoker, and he just couldn't give up cigarettes. That was his thing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Mum got baptized when I was probably about 8 or 9, and yeah, Dad studied, but then just didn't
come in.
No.
So did life change for you at 8 or 9? Do you remember kind of a pre Jehovah's Witness time where maybe there were holidays or things like that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I remember my birthdays and all that. And I think when we started, but my mum is hardline. There's no black or white. So when we first become witnesses, some of my family would send us birthday presents, and she'd send them back.
Yeah.
Or she would hang on to them in a cupboard, and then I was allowed to have them, say, 6 months later, because then it wasn't a birthday present.
Gotcha. But you did still get them. That's interesting.
Yeah. It's funny. Yeah, and then they I think she told my aunties and stuff to stop. Don't send them presents.
Yeah, it is. That's an interesting, time for life to be changing, 8 or 9 years old, because it's kind of, you're pretty young. So when you try to think back, it's kind of hard to remember a lot of things pre-witness, because, your memory only goes so far back. And 8 or 9 is kind of before you really start hitting a lot of, the big events in your life. So you're just still a kid. For yourself, what was the worldview that the religion gave you? As you started changing around that time, how did it make you see the world?
Yeah, it was, I think, especially now I've got my own kids, you look at them and basically I think school and that is it's just survival. You just want to fit in. Do you know what I mean? You don't want to be any different.
Yep.
And I think when you know you are different, but you don't want to be different. You know what I mean? I would, looking back now, I would say that I never, ever wanted any of this. I never wanted it. Do you know what I mean? I loved sports and football, and you know what I mean. And that's what I wanted to do. Do you know what I mean? And I was never allowed to do it. So I have, looking back, I have a bit of I was robbed of my childhood kind of view, you know, and it's hard not to. But I just think that it's very, very naive way to raise children. Yeah, you know what I mean. So.
Yeah, you kind of abdicate your parenting responsibilities and just go along with whatever the society says to do. You know, on some levels.
Yeah, and like I said, my mum was, you know, like growing up, we had to do 2 hours ministry every Saturday morning or Sunday morning. It couldn't be an hour and 45. It couldn't be an hour and 57. It had to be 2 hours. You know what I mean? And it was like knocking on door after door after door. And like where we grew up is a lot of rural territory, so a lot of the other kids got to go. The parents would take them on rural witnessing. Do you know what I mean? So you could do three doors in 2 hours, but we weren't.
You were in town, weren't you?
Yeah. And you know, it's funny. I've reconnected with some of the kids I went to school with, and that, and like what happened was that where we went to school, we were zoned. So if you lived in certain streets, you had to go to certain schools. So. And it was like I lived in the western suburbs of Victoria and, you know, Melbourne, and it's not a very affluent place, so there's not much to do. So kids in my school used to ride their bikes around looking for us, knocking on doors. That was their thing. So you'd come out of the door and they'd be like, "How'd you go? Did you give them anything?" And you'd be like, "Nah," and then they would just follow you.
Oh my gosh. That's like the worst childhood service experience.
Oh, it's funny. Like me, and then my other best friend, if our mums did calls, sometimes they would leave us in the car, and that because if it was winter, there'd be blankets. So we would be hiding in the back seats with blankets over it in case kids rode past looking for us on their bikes.
That is a new one. I have never heard of that.
Or we'd have this other scam that if we knocked on a door and no one was home, we would just stand there, you know, and then stand there for 15 minutes to try to waste time. Yeah. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we had a really good chat," and you know, but there was just no one home. We just sit there and
You do what you got to do to get by. Yeah, that's what everybody is doing.
Creative.
So what was life like at home for you? Did you all, you know, your mom sounds pretty hardline, like you said, on some things, but your dad never fully was part of it. So, and obviously there were some issues just in general between them. So what was life like at home?
It was pretty bad. I think they should never got back together. Like my dad would go through these periods of just not speaking and just sulking, and this is like days on end. And you know, he wouldn't even acknowledge you, or you know. So I don't know if it was like silent wars with my mum. You know, mum pretty much run the house. You know, dad would say if I was grounded on Saturday morning, I would like, "No, I'm going out and witnessing." And he'd be like, "No, you're not. You're staying home." And mum would be like, "No, you can't stop him from doing that." Do you know what I mean? So just to piss my dad off, I would go witnessing. You know what I mean? So yeah,
that puts you in a bad position too. You know, between the two.
Yeah. So mum wore the pants pretty much. She did all the disciplining and stuff like that. I mean, dad, you know, he worked every day of his life to you know, support us, but he was more of a dad, but not a father. Do you know what I mean? Like he didn't really invest or didn't know how to invest in like us kids growing up.
Yeah, he was checked out.
He was checked out. Yeah.
I understand that. I know. I understand that feeling. Know what that looks like. So what about at school? So you know, home life seems pretty stressful. How was school for you? Did you fit in or?
Where we grew up, there was a lot of kids. The original hall, I reckon there would have been at least 60 kids in there. And they split the hall. Wow. Into two congregations, and then it was still like there was, you know, a lot of families that had there was two families that had like 4 or 5 girls each. So our school was full of witnesses, so you couldn't get away with anything at school. So me and my closest mate, we kind of just stuck together and just kind of, just tried to ride the wave pretty much. But then this kid got transferred to our school, and his parents became witnesses, and he got transferred into our class. And there was a knock at the door, and the teacher's like, "Oh, this is our new kid," and they're like, "Where do you want to sit?" And he goes, "I'll sit with me and my friend." I won't mention his name, but because they're witnesses like I am. And so we're like, yeah, everyone knew kind of thing. So then we get to school the next day, and they're like, what's Armageddon? And we're like, what? And they're like, yeah, Nathan said that if we don't become witnesses like you, we're going to die at Armageddon. And I'm just like, oh, God.
Oh, no. He drug you two in it, didn't he?
Yeah. We were just coasting. We had it all sussed. And this kid rocks up, and, it was bad.
Wow.
Bad. So, high school wasn't great, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't really aspire to do anything, you know what I mean? Just
got by. It sounds, honestly, a lot of what you're saying has one common theme, and that is just, riding that wave, or just going with the flow, trying to stay out of trouble, trying to, to keep your head down so that nobody sees you and you just make it through.
Yeah. And I hated Monday mornings because there'd always be some kids that'd seen me out witnessing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was expecting to get teased or whatever, and, like, nice tie, or, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So
did you? I mean, did they follow through on that?
What's that?
Did they actually tease you? Or,
yeah.
Okay. You said that they saw you out in service, so I thought, well, maybe they teased you there and not at school. But
yeah, teased me there, and I remember sometimes when I'd be walking just in the school, they'd always hear like like people would knock.
Oh no. Kids are so nice, they're just so easy on each other. Oh, that's
So
kids know how to push each other's buttons.
Yep, definitely.
So what about in the Kingdom Hall itself? Were you and I guess, did your dad actually go to the meetings at all?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. He would go to he was studying. He'd come to some of the meetings. It's funny, the actual the book study ended up at our house.
Really?
And sometimes he would be working late or something like that, so he would come in, halfway during the book study, and he'd be outside having a smoke, but he'd be listening, and if someone gave an answer, he'd be like, "Oh, great point, yep, I agree." And then whatever the question was, he'd somehow relate it back to him or his work. You know what I mean? Like if they're, talking about respect, and he's like, "Yeah, I visited this client today, no respect at all." And, and the next thing you know, like the book study's gone from our house.
Oh, wow. I was going to say, that's not normal book study behavior. I don't know how they do things in Australia, but here they wouldn't let that go on for too long.
No. So Mum was seething that, Dad had spoilt her, having the chance of having the book study at her house. So.
Yeah, because that's a special privilege, to be able to have something like that at your house. You don't have to leave. Everybody comes to you. You feel special. What about, so at the other meetings, and you kind of touched on service already, but were you somebody who was expected to comment a lot or give talks? How did you reach out, like a little young brother might do?
Yeah, I probably wasn't one of the ones that were really, really that, that spiritual kid. You know what I mean? I'd always had to answer once every Sunday.
Yeah.
But we would and also Mum would always be picking up random people for the meetings and stuff. So you'd have to pick up. It was just her and me and my sister, you know what I mean? And then she'd be picking up people for the meetings and dropping off. So the Tuesday night meeting, sometimes we're not getting home till 10:30, 11 at night. So didn't really reach out for anything. I I had to study with a brother in the hall because my dad wasn't a witness. So I didn't. I think Mum asked. I think by the time I was probably about 13, she asked about when's he going to get baptized, and he was a good guy, man. He was just like, no, he's not ready, kind of thing.
Nice.
Yeah, so he got sacked.
Oh, never mind.
He got sacked, and then this other guy came, and he was an elder, but he was more hardline. He was like, the other guy would we'd go play basketball with the congregations and did that social bit of it, which was good for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Getting to meet other people from different halls and more of that. But this new guy, he was like by the book kind of thing, and he was on the quick build team. So he would take me to the halls, the newly built halls and stuff like that. So I got into that, I think probably in my teenage years. So I actually quite like that. That was
What'd
good.
you do?
I would have to labour for the bricklayers.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'd be carrying all the mud for the bricklayers, or the cement and that. So yeah,
a lot of people seem to really, kind of like that. That was something you could do that. I guess you kind of learned a skill, but also you just. It felt like you were doing something good, but it wasn't answering the same questions at a meeting, or there was some social aspect to it, and it was different. Yeah. I never got into that. My wife did she did insulation for a little while for a crew, but I never. I knew I grew up in a house. My dad never raised a hammer in his life. I knew I had zero skills. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to go there and do.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's cool. That you got to participate in something that you enjoyed, because it sounds like the rest of it for you was a lot of kind of drudgery.
Oh, hated it. Yeah. Hated it.
Yeah.
And like mum was very, very. Oh, the fear of man's got you, Jehovah won't want you at, Armageddon with your fear of man. Do you know what I mean? Because I remember one time I had to go after witnessing and go into the supermarket to get something, and I was covering up my tie. And she's seen me, and then she's just like, you're a disgrace. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's fear of man. You should be proud. But, and other kids at our school, they were like, they'd do studies in the library with people, and they would put the latest books on the windows inside the library, and but that just wasn't me.
Yeah, it's a shame that what you said there is just kind of a little a look into the pressure that the kids are under. If it's not necessarily this fear of man. It's just not all kids are expressive in that way, but you're expected to be. You're expected to be very outgoing, extroverted, to be a company man, to, really push products, so to speak, to be putting the literature and everything out there to the other kids, to make use of that special territory that you have. And, it's just not all kids are going to be like that. And they make no allowance for that.
Yeah. Yeah. I was an unbaptized publisher then. And one of the privileges I got is when the ministry school was on, I'd had to sit next to the who's the guy that does the marking or whatever, the
conductor,
conductor,
yeah,
and I'd have a bell.
Yep, I did. So
when someone went over 5 minutes, I had to buzz them. I had to ding the bell.
Yeah.
So that was and I didn't want to do that. You know what I mean? Like your time to talk. Some people are going for like 3.5 minutes and they're fine, but you could hear people winding up.
Yeah.
And if it went over 5 minutes, I have to ding this stupid bell. And then so everyone in the hall was calling me bellboy, so.
You could not win. My goodness.
So I wouldn't do it. And my mum was like going, you have to, Jehovah's giving you this privilege. And I went, I'm not dinging people. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, look, if you don't ring that bell, Jehovah's going to murder you.
Yeah.
And what a stupid, thing to equate from one thing to the other, But that's how it, like, everything ends up running through this fear of like disappointing Jehovah or whatever.
Yeah. And
because he'll kill you.
that was instilled in us.
Yes.
That was really, really drummed into us, that fear, you know what I mean, of displeasing Jehovah. It was, really, really drummed into us.
And let me ask you, was it that fear of displeasing Jehovah, because, they always like to say it in that way, it's just like you don't want to make your father mad or something like that because you don't want to disappoint him. So let me ask you, was the fear because you didn't want to disappoint him and break his heart, or was your fear because you didn't want to disappoint him and have him break you?
Yeah, definitely. And we were like, there was probably about 6 or 7 us boys all at the same age in our hall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there was a couple that were the pioneering on their school holidays, and there was the four of us. We were ratbags. We were just boys doing what boys did at that age.
Right.
We had a sleepover and we got publicly reproved. We were unbaptized publishers, but they named everything that we did on the platform. It was just stupid stuff. Like what we did do, we had a water fight with water balloons. We put some rocks on the railway track to see them smash, and then we went down to the creek and there was these reeds, and we got a lighter and pretended to smoke the reeds. So
you all got called out publicly for that?
Yeah, and we had we had a bonfire at the back. Wow. So they got us for I don't know, like trying to derail trains, smoking, not marijuana, but and just so we were like, I think we were about like 13, 14 at the time. So that was my first reproof, for that. So that was a big, a big thing back in our hall back then, because some parents were like, this is ridiculous.
That's crazy. I can't believe that they did that. I mean, it just goes to show, I mean, on some level, you see the control where it's almost like you guys were happy and you were having fun, and they had to crush that so that they could shame you so that you could get back in line.
Yeah.
And that's just, that's heartbreaking. I mean, you let kids be kids. You weren't hurting anybody.
Yeah.
Just silly. So what about, as you go through your teen years to young adulthood, is that, is somewhere in there, is that where you end up getting baptized, or how did things play out?
So what happened was that I think when that first guy I got studied with, when he got the boot and the other guy came in, it was like I was getting pressured to get baptized. And so I think I was about 15 or 16 and I was still at school, and we had, at the end of the year, you have an assembly for the school, and each year they have like a dux, like who was the best student. And literally every year was a witness kid. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting at the back, and I remember I could hear two teachers talking, and they're like going, wow, like they really teach their kids, quite well. And I remember the other teacher says it's a shame that they'll never get to go to college or university. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, what? I didn't know that. I didn't know you weren't allowed to. So I went and spoke to my mum, and I said, are we not allowed to go to university? And she's like, no, the Armageddon's coming soon. So I thought, right. So I quit school. So I think I was about 16 at the time, and I went through my questions, but I deliberately tanked the answers because I didn't want to get baptized.
Nice work.
So I remember one was like that scripture, like you're not supposed to have an ox and a smaller animal together, like pulling a plow, because it's like unevenly yoked or whatever it is. And he's like, what does that tell you about Jehovah? And I'm like, you might fall off, you know what I mean? Like, I knew exactly what the answer was supposed to be. So I got, two of the elders were like, but one was really, really good. Like he was just, I said to him, I don't really want to get baptized. And he's like, that's fine. You're not ready, So they didn't let me. And my mum was like, what? Like, what? And they're just like, he's not ready. So I decided to leave school, and I did a couple of bits and bobs and that, but then I got a job actually in a printing a printing factory, and I was doing. I'd have to, when the stuff gets printed, I'd have to like wrap them up and put them in boxes and organise the deliveries. Or if it was small, I had a trolley, a box trolley, and I would walk around like Melbourne doing the deliveries. So yeah, I did that for nearly 2 years. But that leaving school and getting this job, it really, really changed me, because mixing with older people, having some freedom, I really started to see what the world was about. You know what I mean? So, and what it was there was a bar, a pub next door to where we worked, and I think I was just turned 17 at the time, and the guys I work with, they said, well, come and have a beer at the pub, even though I was underage. Okay. But on the Friday nights after work, for that's what I did. Like, it had an awesome jukebox, it had a pool table, and it was like it's like that show Cheers. Do you know what I mean? It was just a real mix of aged people telling stories, having a laugh, everyone putting different tunes on the jukebox, playing pool. It wasn't about drinking or getting drunk. It was just a social bit. And, you know, I was a young 17-year-old mixing with these people telling stories. There was one guy, he was a jail warden, so he would come in and, you know, he'd tell stories about what had happened at his work, about, you know, inmates and stuff like that. So, yeah, I loved it, you know, and the last train home to my town was at 9:30. So, you know, I finished work at 6. I'd be at this place, you know, mixing with these other guys, and, you know, get home by 10 o'clock on Friday nights. And I did that for, you know, nearly 2 years.
Wow. That's quite an experience for somebody at that point in their life, and, you know, coming from the witnesses. I have to ask, how did your parents feel when you quit school?
They were fine. It was fine. It was like,
it was just a waste of time anyway.
It was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I after going through my questions, and then, they were just like, yep. You know, Dad wouldn't have never had a say, but, so I had this job, and I didn't, obviously I'd never told my mum what I was doing. I was drinking at the pub. I'd always be like, oh, I'm seeing a movie, or, you know what I mean? Or I'm having dinner in town, or, but even with the witness kids, they'd be like, oh, what are you doing Friday night? And I'd be like, oh, I'm busy. And, you know, my closest mates are like, oh, you going to that stupid pub again? And I'm like, yep. And they would end up coming in as well, because, you know, so they would get the train in, and, you know, it was great, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a lot of fun for, you know, somebody at that age and that point in their life. How did you go from that to the meet? Like, when you went to a meeting after, or maybe I guess Saturday morning, you went out in field service or whatever, how did you feel going from this little slice of life that seems kind of free and happy, and where you felt like you could be yourself, to then having to go right back into witness mode again?
Yeah, I think this is when I really, really worked the art of having a double life.
Yeah.
I perfected it.
And how did you feel inside? I mean, did you just kind of deaden yourself and go on with it, or did you really struggle with it?
No. Just, you know, just very, very good at covering my tracks, and you know what I mean? And it's you
kind of learn to compartmentalize some of that stuff, don't you?
I must have.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, because my mum wasn't like naive, and, you know, I mean, a couple of times if I come home and, you know, my eyes are rolling the back of my head because I'd had too many beers, but, you know, and I'd, you know, bang, get up Saturday morning, I'd be out in field service. So she was happy.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as you do what they want you to do, they don't really care that much.
No.
Which is a shame too, because it shows they don't really see you or value you, the individual. It's just, so much of it is for show.
Yeah.
So when did you get baptized, or did you get baptized? Yeah.
So what happened was that, one of the guys that I worked with, I'm actually still friends with him today. He said to me, he says, come here. I said, what? He goes, I look at you working. I said, you're a good worker. He goes, I don't mean to be rude, because I was turning 18.
Yeah.
I was turning 18 and I was talking about him, trying to buy a car and couldn't afford it. And he says, well, you need to do something, mate. You can't, are you going to be like a delivery boy for the rest of your life? Or, you know what I mean? You need to get some sort of qualification or schooling or something, So he suggested, why don't you do a printing apprenticeship to learn how to become a printing machinist? So I was like, right, okay. But I knew that involved going over here. You have to go to trade school.
Right.
And that's higher education. So what I did is that I thought, yeah, he's right. I was earning peanuts. I was like nearly 18. So I went and spoke to my mum, and we went and spoke to the elders. And the agreement was that if I was to get an apprenticeship, it would best suit me to go to Bethel. So that was the loophole that I came up with, that I would get an apprenticeship so that I could go to Bethel and be a printer at Bethel. Another lie.
No, okay, I gotcha. So, I see how you worked that.
Yeah, so that was the angle. So I went to my work and said I want to, do an apprenticeship. Oh, and at the same time they said, well, he's not baptised either. And one of the elders there was a bit of a narcissist looking back, but he was like, well, he's not baptised, he's nearly 18. And I said, I was being a smart ass. I said, I've done the questions, mate. I said, I've already dedicated myself to Jehovah. I just haven't done it publicly, just trying to be a smart ass. And he's like, wow, that's a great answer. So the next convention was like 3 weeks later. So done.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I was just like, oh, and the guy that I said I didn't want to get baptized, he was there as well. And I could kind of see him was looking at me funny. You know what I mean? Because he knew that I didn't want to get baptized, and, I was being made to do it. But
yeah,
that allowed me to start my apprenticeship. And so I thought, well, I'll do it.
Yeah, I mean, how are you going to do an apprenticeship and then potentially work at Bethel if you're not baptized? So that is one thing they kind of got you on.
Yeah. It was funny when I got baptized, it was because it was a circuit assembly. There wasn't that many. It was me and I think 3 other girls. And the guy giving the talk, he's like, there's a brother here today that plans to get baptized and go to Bethel. And because I was the only guy, all my friends are like, mate, they are not letting you into Bethel. You are not going to Bethel. And I said, yeah, I know.
Well, they knew who you were.
Yeah. So I couldn't get an apprenticeship with that company, but I got what they worked. We worked it out, and I got an apprenticeship at a different company, but they couldn't start me till the new year. So my sister at this time was living up in Queensland, which is the north of Australia. So I went up there for a few months before I started. So I was living with her, and it was good. And then came back and started my apprenticeship. And so that was, and then by this stage, I think I was 18. I got my own car, so I had that little bit of independence. And so I just got stuck into working.
And so where do you go from there? Because you're in this apprenticeship. How long was the apprenticeship?
It's 4 years. So, wow. And what had happened is, I think 2 years into my apprenticeship, our work got bought out by a bigger company. And at this stage, out of my 3 closest friends, one had moved and had girlfriend, and my other 2 closest mates had both got girlfriends. So by this stage, I was pretty much on my own or just doing the chaperone for them. And so my work got sold, and they weren't going to take me on. The new place wasn't going to take me on as an apprentice. So they had an office over in Perth, which is in the west coast of Australia. And that's 3,500 kilometres away on the west coast. So what's that? Over 2,000 miles away. Mm-hmm. So from the east coast of Australia to the west coast. I had a cousin living there, so I did it. So I packed up and left, because at that stage I I wasn't doing that well. We'd kind of had a bit of a reputation where we grew up as like the Melton boys, you know what I mean? We'd done some, you know, stupid stuff, and, you know, the typical witness grapevine, I guess, you know, there's all these rumors and, you know, gossip.
It always gets around.
Yeah, you know, and it's like it's not cool, you know what I mean? So you go to parties and people are like, "Oh, so you're one of the Melton boys," and I'll be like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Do you know what I mean?" Like,
yeah, you were prejudged,
we had this poor, you know, and like no girl would go near you because you had this bad reputation, or, you know, it's all majority was all made up, or, you know what I mean? So, and then my two best mates had, you know, started courting girls and stuff, so I was kind of, you know, no man's land pretty much.
Yeah. So where do you go from there? I mean, you can't, it seems kind of isolating.
Yeah. So I literally thought, well, this is my chance now. So I hadn't really taken the truth seriously. Like my passion is like music and live music and bands. So like weekends we would just go, that's what we would do. We would go out and see bands and that was our thing, you know, so it was great. And I'm glad that I did that, you know what I mean? You know, we'd always lie and cover up and, you know, I'm staying at your house and you're staying at my house, and, you know what I mean? All that sort of, all the stuff to go see bands, and, you know, so we had that, which was good, that I never missed out on that sort of stuff. I remember, one of the time, I can't remember what band it was, but, you know, when you used to go in, you used to get like the stamp on your wrist.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't realize, but they'd, the stamp was the star with a circle on it, like the Satan star.
Like a pentagram or something?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Yep. So
awesome.
The next day at the meeting, I put my hand up, and lucky one of my friends was on microphones, and he's like, "Dude," I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Your wrist." And I looked down and I had a pentagram nightclub stamp on my wrist, and I'm like, so I run to the bathroom at the Kingdom Hall and I'm scrubbing my wrist, trying to get rid of this Satan sign on my wrist.
Well, the important question is, did you get called on?
No.
Of course not, because you had a Satan star on your hand.
That's it. So
Jehovah knew that you shouldn't be called on at that meeting.
Yeah, that's it. So so I moved to Perth, and I moved there with my cousin, and she's all I knew. So she was a few years older than me. Excuse me. So I kind of slotted in with her group of friends, and they were like completely different to what I'd grown up with. Like they were straight witnesses, man. I was just like, what is going on? Like there was no drinking, partying, smoking, drugs, nothing. You know, so,
what kind of witnesses are those?
Oh man, like that was like, not, I'm talking naive, you know, I was just shaking my head. Like, I remember two girls were like, you know, I think they were like 19, and they were like at a dinner party saying that, you know, they'd never kissed a boy before, and they were like really embarrassed by it. And the host they were like a married couple, and, you know, they were like, well, why don't you two girls just kiss these two boys here? And I thought they were joking. And one of them went away and got like chewing gum out of her car. And I went, oh, no, this is not happening. I'm not doing that.
That's really weird.
How weird is that?
What the heck?
Yeah. And anyway, I'm like, nah, that's not right. You know, wait till you get a boyfriend or whatever and all that. And on the ride home in the car, my friend I was with is like, you're an idiot. I've had the hots for her for years. Oh,
you blew it. What a terrible wingman, Matt.
So I settled in, and then really, really, really straight. And it was probably good for me, because it really gave me a chance to not have a reputation or anything like that, and just really try to, I don't know, do the right thing, I guess.
So what does Matt become, you know, in a situation where now you're around these people who are a lot, you know, who are walking the straight and narrow, so to speak? What do you do?
Be very, very bored, very bored.
Yeah.
Like some of the parties we went to, witness parties, I'm just like, this is like, you know, is this what it should be? And I thought, oh, well, maybe it is. You know, I mean, there's no one no one hooking up. There's no one getting drunk, and you know what I mean. Like I thought, well, maybe this will do me good. So we had some. It was a weird time. It's very, very cliquey over there. It's like if you're not from there, you don't really belong, kind of thing. It's
I know that.
very. I think because I'd grown up and I knew everyone, and then going somewhere completely new and not knowing anyone, it was like couldn't really make like close friends, kind of thing. You know, it was very, very superficial.
Yeah.
Very superficial. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, a lot of the relationships really are pretty superficial because, you know, you're protecting yourself. You can't be truly authentic and let people know what your real thoughts are about things or how you really feel, because there's a danger that you get outed or that, you know, somebody else is, you know, trying to one up you and be more righteous and holy because they would never listen to such a song. And, you know, it's this silly and very petty system of, you know, people who are all in a group, who are all the same, trying to be different in some way.
Yeah.
And sometimes the only way they can be different and not get in trouble is to one up each other. So it's really hard. And I imagine that was a lot of stress for you.
Yeah.
I mean, because you were such a, you know, you were a cut up, or you had fun, or you weren't, you know, as straight laced as these people.
Yeah.
So that had to be tough.
Yeah. So I moved in with these single brothers. There was one guy was an MS, and then there was I think there was 5 of us all up living in this house, and like you would assume it was a party house, but no, you could put beers in the fridge on Saturday and they'd be there the next week. You know what I mean? Like none of them drunk or whatever, but it was like almost like a casting call for like young sisters. Like these girls would just rock up to the house, and it's just like the bachelor house. And one of them, you know, like he had the same little play he would do. You know, he he could play the piano, so we'd go, oh, you know, sister such and such, you know, I was thinking about you and I wrote this song. So he would play the same song for every sister that would come into the house, and then he would take him on a motorbike for a ride and take him out for lunch, and it was just repetitive. Like every week there'd be this new girl, and I'm like, mate, they're all going to get together and go, Pete wrote me this song, and he's like, oh, you wrote me the same song. So
yeah. That's not thinking things through all the way. Good grief, the naivete.
And so the girl, it was a weird situation. Like it's just like girls would come in and, you know, like come to the house for dinner or something like that, and it was like a dating thing, like, you know, everyone eyeing each other up and like trying to find a mate almost, I guess.
Well, yeah, I mean, when you think about it, that's what, you know, a lot of the time spent in the conventions, but, you know, lunchtime or before or after a convention is a lot of young people sizing each other up, trying to figure out, you know, is this someone I'm interested in, or because it's your chance to meet someone outside of your congregation, you know,
definitely.
Depending on where you grew up, you may not have had many options. And so it's trying to network and meet people. And it sounds like since all those brothers lived in one house, it was an opportunity to kind of do some of that networking and trying to meet people. How did you feel in that environment?
I think Perth is a very, very affluent city, and coming from the western suburbs, like I had no money whatsoever, but a lot of these brothers, like they were well off. They come from well off families, and they were, I wouldn't say materialistic, but they would drive Porsches and BMWs and do you know what I mean? Like that's just what their family could afford. You know, they had investment properties and they had their own houses and boats, and you know what I mean? So like, you know, the girls weren't interested in like someone that didn't have money, you know what I mean? And that's that very, you know, and that's not just witnesses. I guess that's probably, you know, unfortunately a stereotype that's in the world as well, that, you know, guys that have got money tend to, you know, a lot of girls interested in, you know, so yeah, that was, and then, so then by this time I was just dying to get back to Melbourne. I just I didn't enjoy it. I couldn't fit in over there. So someone in the hall said, "Oh, look, we're going on this like camping trip, and then over to this island off the coast of Western Australia. It's called Rottnest Island." And then there was this young girl from the UK on the ferry, and we struck up a conversation, and then married.
Really? How long?
Yes.
How long did it take before you got married?
I think it was within a year.
Yeah.
So we clicked straight away. So she's Scottish. So she's was out on a holiday from Scotland. I think she was. I think we were on the same boat. Like she was not running away from her issues, but she was exploring the world, and I think because we were both in an environment that we were kind of on the outer, but we definitely clicked, and we got on like a house on fire, and so her visa was running out, and we went and spoke to the immigration department, and they're like, well, there's option B, and I said, look, let's get married. So we got so we got married. So we flew back to Melbourne, got married, and it was this is good. Her parents, the congregation in Scotland, everyone chipped in, and they bought her mum and dad airplane tickets to come to Melbourne for our wedding, and so it was good.
I gotta ask, so how did you all just date? Through the phone or letters, or because that's
no, she was still in Australia at this time.
She stayed in Australia. Okay.
Yeah, so she stayed. So she had about a year to go on her visa.
Oh, okay.
So, so we would she was sharing with another sister, in a unit. So we kind of just date. I mean, like we never. It was hard because it's like. Didn't have chaperones and stuff, and she didn't have a car, so I'd have to go pick her up for the meetings and and stuff like that. But we never really got any grief, to be honest, because it's funny.
That is interesting because I know here if you didn't have a chaperone, you get a lot of grief. Depending on especially who you were. So you get married, and something must have happened because you're talking to me now. Yeah. So how did things play out? After you get married, how did your lives go? Because like you said, you were both kind of running a little bit or a little bit on the outskirts of the organization. How'd that work out?
I think if I was like truly honest when we got married and said, look, I've got all these doubts, and she would have said, well, same here. But, it takes years and years and years to really get to that stage. Sure. You know what I mean? And and
there's so many expectations too. When a new young couple gets married, there's a lot of expectations in the congregation of you as well.
Yeah. So, and like, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know, the only thing I had to look at was my parents growing up, and that was extremely dysfunctional.
Yeah.
And her parents are like quite normal. Do you know what I mean? So I brought all this luggage into our relationship that I hadn't dealt with or didn't know how to deal with. Sure. You know what I mean? So she's probably thinking, what the hell? So so we kind of, we started with nothing pretty much. Like she arrived in Australia with just a suitcase, and I went over to Western Australia, and I took my car over, and that's literally all we had. So her flatmate moved out, and I moved into the unit, and we were struggling. We couldn't pay our rent. You know what I mean? Like we just couldn't. We were really struggling to get by. So we did that. We toiled for a good few years. We went back and lived in the UK for a year to give that a go, but just didn't really pan out over there either. So we came back and came back to Perth. We were kind of drifting. Even back then, I think we were like we'd miss a lot of meetings. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I never really. We changed halls as well. You know what I mean? Like because just didn't. like the hall, so we were like kind of drifting between halls and meetings, and do you know what I mean? So we
Sounds
never
like
really
you're kind of trying to find something to keep you there.
Yeah, pretty much. So then we didn't really have any close friends over there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny. Then one time we went. It's place is called Margaret River. It's south of Perth. It's like the wineries and the vineyards and all that. Probably a bit like, say, I don't know, like is it Napa Valley?
Napa Valley, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we just went for a weekend away, and there was like the local pub in the town, and we decided to drop in and just have a drink or whatever. And all these witnesses were in there, and they were the akin that I'd grown up with. They were partying and drinking and smoking and all that sort of stuff. So I was just like, oh, right, okay, you know what I mean? And I remember feeling really, really disheartened, do you know what I mean? That I thought I'd left all that behind, and then they're like, come on in, and, and we ended up, I guess, birds of a feather, you know what I mean? We ended up becoming friends with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was good because we didn't really have anyone, but they were like more like our people.
Yeah, you felt more at home.
Felt more at home, yeah. So no one was married then, so we were the only married couple, but there was a couple courting. There was, I think, 2 or 3 couples courting and stuff like that. So, yeah. So we got a new friendship group, which kind of helped us a bit. So So
and did the new friendship group, because they were at least still witnesses, did that kind of make you feel more like, hey, you know what? Maybe we can do this whole witness thing.
Definitely. So we and then we kind of we was thinking about starting a family as well. So we're thinking about having children, and so by this time a lot of the people that we were hanging around with were getting married, and so then it was like we had other married couples to hang with, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we were but because I'd had such a pretty rough upbringing, like we were always getting different schools, different houses, and that the one thing I really, really wanted was stability, and I didn't want to be renting when we had kids. Do you know what I mean? Because you can get evicted, or you can, they can sell the house or whatever. So I said, look, I really want to, if we want to have our own family, have our own house. So we decided, I remember saying to you about like when you had all that debt. Mm-hmm. We just sat together and went, you know what, we're just going to have to really, really go for it and just work and get a deposit for a house. And at this time, I was probably the best I've ever done in the truth. Mm-hmm. I was on microphones. I was on the literature counter as well. So that was my peak. that was my peek.
That's a peak for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's funny. People they're like, oh, I was Bethelite and I was this and that. Like I think I pioneered once and I didn't even get the hours. So apart from bellboy, this was me next. But what this involved was like, because I was working a lot of hours, and when I was on the literature counter, there was another guy on there as well, and I said, look, I'm going to struggle to get to the meetings on time. I said, but so if you want to do the opening up, and I'll work back after the meeting to do the books and stuff. Mm-hmm. And what had happened was something had happened and he couldn't make it, and he wasn't there, and so there was no one on the literature counter before the meeting.
Right.
And this elder's wife, so there was three congregations that shared the hall. So the shipment was in of all the books. Mm-hmm. So she decided to just help herself and open up all the boxes and divvy out all the books to people. Mm-hmm. And people were like, oh, is that the new calendar? Oh, I'll give us one of them, but you're supposed to pre-order them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean? There's a list, and you have to check it off when people pick up those things. I've been there.
So this elder's wife had just like given out, and so I get to the meeting and all the boxes are open, and what had happened is that she'd taken like books and stuff from the other congregation and handed it out, and I'm like, what the hell's going on here? So then I was in the back room of the hall, and they're like, you're not taking your responsibilities seriously. I said, well, Carl's supposed to be here. I said, we've got an arrangement. He goes, no, that's not good enough. And I went, what do you mean? They said, you've now all the literature's all. I said, well, that elder's wife went and did it. She's,
that's not your fault. She overstepped.
She's a woman. She's not supposed to do anything in this hall. You know what I mean? Like, so. Yeah, so then they said, no, you don't come, you're late to meetings and all that. You're out. And I said, well, I'm working. I can't. And they said, well, you need to have a look at your lifestyle.
Yep.
This, that, the other. And I was like, you know what, you can jam it. You can jam it. So that was it. And I was just like, it's not worth it. So yeah, we kind of, just really, really started drifting. And then the next thing like, how you have the pigeonhole for your magazines at the back of the hall?
Yeah.
Did you have that? Like, we lost our pigeonhole.
You lost your pigeonhole?
Yep.
Wow.
So I'd be like, where's my magazines? And they're like, oh, you didn't come and collect them, so you've lost your pigeonhole. And I was just like, oh, no, really? And then get a letter in the mail, and they started the talk slips were getting sent to you in the mail.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
We never had that.
So I thought, yeah, so because they would I said to the conductor, I said, why am I getting, he goes, oh, you weren't here when I was giving them out. I said, well, I was here on Sunday. He goes, oh, well, I only give them out on the Tuesday nights. So every time I got one in the mail, I'm like, oh, well, I won't be going that night.
So you just didn't show or anything?
I wouldn't show. The Kingdom Ministries started rocking up in the mail as well, and I'm like, oh, what's going on here, eh? And I was just like, I'm over this. I'm so over this. So yeah, we were working really, really hard, and like missing a lot of meetings, and just drifting, and and then nothing. Like there was no. I thought, oh, we're going to get a shepherding call for sure, but nothing.
No.
Yeah.
No, been there too. Nobody shows up. Nobody calls. Nobody cares if you're dead or alive.
Yeah, pretty much. And then then by this time we'd saved up enough to get a deposit to build a house. So we bought some land, and we built a house, and we were happy. We were nesting. So
yeah.
And meetings took a second fiddle, pretty much.
And how did your wife feel, through all this? Was she struggling with it, or was she on board with it?
Oh, I think she was on board. I think for me personally, I was like, I'm supposed to be the spiritual head of this family, and I'm a slacker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
And I thought, well, if I was like the one, like, it's funny because I think deep down, if we were both honest with each other and going, I don't want to go to the meeting today. Yeah, me either. Let's just stay home. Or let's go out for lunch, or let's just do what normal couples do.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So Sunday morning, there'd always be this tension because, like, who was going to be the first one to go, nah, not going.
Right.
And I remember one Sunday, the TV show Scrubs, it just happened to be on TV, and we had the afternoon meeting, and we watched the first few episodes, and we looked it up, and there was like 5 series, and we'd never seen it before. So we went up to the video store and we hired all 5 series, and we just binge watched it on the couch, and we're like, we were so happy, and we're just like, and I remember saying, would you rather be at the meeting or sit on this couch eating popcorn and watching Scrubs? And she said, yep.
That makes me think when I would sometimes, I've talked before about, I would drive to the Kingdom Hall and then get so anxious that I couldn't go in, and we'd turn and leave. I mean, I would literally drive, get ready, do all the stuff, drive into the Kingdom Hall parking lot, turn around and go back home. Yep. And my wife, I remember, at some point telling me like it feels so awesome when we turn around and leave.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one that we decided to make. We'd always have these packs like, right, we're really going to make an effort. So we get ready for the meeting and we drive in there, and it's a working bee, and everyone's out there cutting the grass and. Oh. And we've rocked up, and they've seen us, and we're in I'm in my tie and suit. She's all dressed up, and people are just like looking at us. And I had to do a U-turn and then drive out. And it was a working bee day at the hall.
Well, now you all did go back and help clean the Kingdom Hall and cut the grass and
Nah,
stuff, right?
no, yeah, and same with assemblies. Like, like if we were late to the assembly, I remember we drove to assemblies and we're just like, oh, I cannot be bothered.
Yeah.
Just really, really didn't, but we so then by this time that we'd said, right, we're going to start a family. So we had our first daughter, and, so that was great, but we'd set up the house and, we'd painted all the room and just doing what, normal people did. And so she was, I don't think, yeah, so we were back at the meetings then. So we were like kind of, right, okay, let's, we've got a daughter now, let's get back to all the meetings and stuff like that. So we went through a phase of, back at the meetings. And
a lot of people, that's just interesting that you bring that up, because a lot of people, when they have kids, kind of try to get back into it, or maybe if they're out, they start hanging out with their families a little bit more, and then their families start trying to influence them and the kid. Having a kid really does, when you're in and around the organization, suddenly it changes the way you see a lot of things, or the way other people see you. And then it can result in a lot of pressure to get back into it all. Because now, if you don't, what? I mean, do you telling me you don't care about the everlasting life of your child?
Yep.
Yeah. And you already feel it. You talked about as the head of the house, so to speak, as a brother. You do feel oftentimes some level of shame, like you're supposed to be the example that is set for your wife, and then of course your kids later. And like if they don't make it through Armageddon or whatever, like that's all on you. There's a lot of pressure there to perform too.
Yep, definitely. But like, I think as well, because at this stage it was like, I think you've talked about it before, like the trust in Jehovah shelf, or the witness shelf. And it was for me, it was really, really near breaking point at this stage as well. Do you know what I mean? Like,
you put all your doubts up on that shelf, and eventually it starts to crumble. Yeah,
and I think as well, because the way I was brought up as well, it's like, there was like when you sit at the meeting, you're quiet, you sit and you listen, you take notes.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? That's the way I was trained. Whereas my wife, I think she more enjoyed the social aspect of it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Of the witnesses, whereas I was like, would sit and listen, and I just remember sitting at meetings and just going, I don't get this connection from Jesus living in Israel. For one, Jesus isn't white. He's a Middle Eastern man. He was born in Israel, or
you don't typically picture a white man.
No, he's an Arab.
Right.
Right. And how for all these years in between, like the 1200s, the 1300s, the 1400s, nothing, to all of a sudden in America.
Mm-hmm.
Judge Rutherford comes along, and I couldn't get that connection from that to all these, like the Dark Ages, to now we're in America, like we're the new fulfillment of the Bible kind of thing. And that was one of the big doubts I had. I couldn't get that connection.
Oh yeah, it was always. I remember wondering about that too. This whole void from Jesus' day and when the apostles never, around what, I don't know, when's the Bible end, 100 CE? I don't know, whatever it is. And then suddenly there's no real organization or anything until suddenly a guy in the 1800s named Russell starts questioning things or whatever. And of course we're told a sanitized version of what happened back then as well. But I just never understood, like, if this is so important, how did all these centuries go by, and where's the truth in all those centuries? It didn't add up.
And for me as well, it's like, I used to do this thing that, like, how like they'd make a statement and then put a scripture at the end of it to say, look, this has come from the Bible. You know what I mean? And I
Yep.
thought, well, you could pretty much do that with anything. You know what I mean? You could find a loophole, or
Yeah.
you know, and I go like, okay, you know, you shouldn't eat marshmallows, and then you could find a scripture,
I
and you could
dare
somehow,
you to find a scripture.
no, like, you know, don't be, you know,
Yeah.
gluttony or something like
Sure,
that.
of
You know,
course,
like
of course.
they could say marshmallows are full of fat. You should not eat marshmallows. Scripture that says gluttony is an evil sin.
Right.
I said you can do that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You can make any statement and put a scripture at the end of it, and it's the law.
Yeah, and the Bible itself is so ambiguous, you can read just about anything into it.
Yeah, so
In a lot of
I just
ways.
remember that's really, really when I started having doubts. And then because we had our first daughter, it was like Mother's Day. And then I was thinking, well, what's wrong with Mother's Day? You know, and then there's, you know, it's pagan. And I thought, and I looked it up and I thought, well, no, it's not pagan. It stems from some nurse that every once a year would take flowers in for old people in old nursing homes and stuff.
You mean some
And then,
pagan nurse?
yeah, and then it's like, no, it's creature worship. You know, you're putting someone on a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then I thought, well, I don't know. They do baby showers in Australia.
Yep.
Witnesses.
Anniversary parties.
Anniversaries are massive. You know, like I remember going to an anniversary thing and they had a cake. And I'm like, with candles.
Yep.
And I went, that's not right. You know what I mean? So I had all these, it was really, really, it was like, yeah, I couldn't really suppress these doubts. And it was really, really creeping in.
So was there anything that helped you? You know, you had your own doubts.
Yeah.
It's funny. I remember there were times where I had questioned some things. And I remember my mom went to some of my friends and told them that I was becoming an apostate. Or maybe had listened to them or whatever. And I just had doubts and I started seeing things. You know, apostates are just people who saw the same things I did. And so for you, when you start waking up or whatever, is there a moment where you start to finally, like, were there any resources or anything that helped you, or was this all on your own?
All me. And by this, I mean, like, this is what I'm saying. So this is over years. So now we're on to, you know, my son was born and we were like really, really spasmodic at the meetings. Like we weren't really there much. Do you know what I mean? And then, you know, and I'd had enough by then, you know, like, you know, when people come up and they're like, good to see you, brother, you know, where have you been? I remember I shocked this guy once. He goes, good to see you. Where have you been? I went, at home. Oh, you not been working? No. Oh, I watched the football last Sunday. It was great. Yep. Just being brutally honest, because I was just like, you know, I'm not going to fake, oh yeah, I've been sick, brother. And, you know, and I've been working a lot. And, you know, I was just like, you know, don't come up. And it's pretty much saying, where have you been?
Of course, that's what they're fishing for. Yeah. We all know what they want. They just want some gossip.
Yeah. And by this time and then our youngest daughter was born, and I remember when she was born, I just burst into tears in the birthing suite, and I went, I can't do this to these kids. I just remember saying to myself, that's it now. I cannot make these kids do, because by this time my oldest one had started school, so we're doing the, you know, no birthdays, no Christmas stuff, and all that. And I thought, I can't be a hypocrite. I can't make them do something that I'm not invested in and I don't believe in. And I just remember, I remember it clear as day going, I can't do this to this one as well. Yeah. So at this stage, we were kind of both on the same page. I think my wife had missed a memorial. She's just like, no, I'm not going. And I went, oh, all right. So I did I went to a different hall that no one knew me, just to go to the memorial. And people were like, did you go to memorial? I went, oh yeah, I went to, you know, I had to work, so I went to one close to town, or, you know what I mean? Like, but I think when you miss the memorial, that's like, you know, that's
a big deal.
That's a big deal. So, and at this stage we were like, well, we're not going to meetings, and we've those friends that we'd met, you know, they were kind of there was a lot of partying then as well. So they were we were the only one with kids, but so, you know, we'd put a pool in our house, and, you know, there was a lot of pool parties and, you know, drinking and, you know, all that sort of stuff at our house. And then, like, it wouldn't be reciprocated kind of thing, because people would almost want to come to our place to party and that. And then, yeah, we couldn't play the witness social game. It was whacked. Do you know what I mean? Like, people would be making dinner plans in front of you, and then they're like, not invite you kind of thing.
Oh gosh, yeah. Believe me, I know that one.
Yeah, and I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with these people? And then it came out that what's the rule when you're a bad host? You got to be. So when people come over and they make an ass of themselves, it's your fault because you're a bad host.
Right.
You know what I mean? So so if you're a bad host, so we were like, and then we started almost getting like marked by people kind of thing. Like, even though like my wife was like, had children, she didn't drink, you know, had the young kids, and, you know, and then a couple other things happened. Like one of our friends, she met a workmate, and he wasn't a witness, so they fell in love. And, you know, she's a really, really great chick. You know, we really, really good friends with her. So a lot of people were like, well, we can't associate with you because, you know, he's not a witness kind of thing. And he started studying as well. So then, okay, that's okay. Now he's studying. But the guy he studied with, he told me, he said, like, all these things I'm learning that I'm not supposed to do, like, these witness guys are doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the drinking, I don't know if it's just a witness thing or it's a big issue. Is a big issue with the witnesses, especially over in Perth. It was like, I'm saying, like, guys drinking before meetings. One guy got caught having a bottle of bourbon in the meter box at the hall. You know what I mean? Like,
it's the one vice that is acceptable with a very vague limit that is, you know, kind of up to personal conscience or whatever. And you see a lot of people struggle with alcohol because I think it's their method of escape. It's the one thing they can do to escape. Yeah,
I remember going up myself. I was getting some drinks from the.
I'm sorry, that and prescription pills. Prescription pills have become huge here in the States as far as that. So yeah.
Really?
Oh yes, yes.
So he had his meeting clothes on and his kids in the back of the car, and he was coming out. He was getting drinks before the meeting, you know, and and I watched him. He went and sat in the car park and had drinks. And I'm like, I was thinking, how in your mind can you justify that sort of behaviour? Like what, you know, like, so clearly this guy's got doubts. Clearly he doesn't want to go. You know what I mean? So I know that he's, you know, I'm sure one day I'll find out that his shelf has collapsed and that. So, yeah. So anyway, she started studying with this guy. A lot of witnesses were like for it or not for it, and then they decided to get married. And it was a big thing, like, are you going to go to the wedding? And I'm like, I'm going. You know, she's our friend. I don't care that he's, you know, not a witness. So there was a big divide. And as it turns out, her dad was an elder and her brother was gay. He was brought up a witness, but he was gay, so he left. Went to London and, you know, lived this, quote, debauched life with his partner and boyfriend and that. So he came back for the wedding. So she had to say, look, you know, her dad had to step down as an elder to attend the wedding. She's marrying an unbeliever, and there's going to be gay guys at the wedding. So there was a big line like, are you going to go? Are you not going to go? And I'm like, oh, I'm going. And I was, you know, that's how far gone I was. Like, I don't care. So half the witnesses went, half the witnesses didn't go. But the witnesses that didn't go, they were going to Bali for their honeymoon. So the witnesses that didn't go, they planned to meet them in Bali on their honeymoon and have a reception over there, because by that stage they would be married technically.
Wow.
Yeah. And
just a loophole.
A loophole. And I'm like, and at the wedding, you know, it was great. It was at a brewery. Like, everyone got tanked. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and like, so, there I'm dancing on the dance floor with these two gay guys having a great time. It was awesome, and I'd never actually spent any time with gay guys before. And so the next day they had hired a house, so that they'd gone away from the honeymoon, and they had the house that they hired had a pool and stuff in it before the wedding. So they said, look, anyone that wants to come over and use the pool, do it. So we went over the next day, and we all got into the pool, and the two, her brother and her partner, were in the pool at the same time. So it was like us witness boys at one end and these two gay guys at the other. And I said, this is pretty awkward, isn't it? I said, I'm going to go over and talk to him. So went over and had a bit of a chat to him, and so he grew up a witness, and he just is gay. And then that's when I realized that it's not a lifestyle choice. It's just who you are.
Right.
So
especially in a situation like that, why would you choose it?
Yeah. So
because it's going to hurt you.
Yeah. So they lived in London, and they were, so we started talking about, the difference between London and Australia, and they're saying, look, it's really, really expensive over in London. And I said, so what do you do like socially? And they said, oh, look, going out's expensive. So, sometimes we'll have people over and stuff like that, and I said, oh yeah. He goes, oh, but it's typical. You've always got those friends that they rock up and, they don't bring anything. You've always got those friends that are like a real tight ass. And my mate says, oh, I doubt any of your friends have got tight asses. And we just went, oh, and they just started laughing and laughing and laughing. So that kind of broke the ice.
Humor is good for that.
Yeah. So anyway, so we're sitting there talking, and I'm just like, oh, these are just normal guys. They're great, kind of thing. So after that, and after the hearing that they all went to Bali for this other reception because they wouldn't go to the wedding, I'm just like, oh, that is so wrong. How can you justify that? But because I think one guy was an MS, and he was told that if he goes to this witness wedding, he's not going to be an MS anymore.
Right.
So they paid to go to Bali, and they had a second reception in Bali after they were married. And
shows how stupid and technical a lot of this stuff is.
And then you find out that he told me that some people didn't buy him presents, even though they came to the wedding, because they decided they didn't want to support it anymore. But they'd RSVP'd, so they went there, ate the food, drank the beer, and didn't buy him presents because they didn't want to. They couldn't condone it.
Sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah, so I think that was by this stage we were just like, this is laughable, absolutely laughable. So I remember having a bit of a chat to my wife, and we're like going, look, we need to decide what we're going to do now, because like we had no family over in Perth. We were on our own. We hadn't really. I had a lot of friends that I worked with, but we hardly ever did anything socially with them. And the school mums and the kids at the parents at the school, we hadn't connected with them. They invited us over, and we're like, no. So they were like, ugh, okay, you know what I mean? So we thought, well, we considered like let's move back to Melbourne. So the house next door went up for sale, and we looked it up how much they were asking for it, and I thought, well, if we get that, we're laughing. So we put the house up for sale, and then a job came up in Melbourne that was really, really good. So I actually flew over from Perth to Melbourne for the interview, and the guy says to me, goes, oh, how keen are you for this job? And I went, mate, I've just flown 3,500 kilometers.
Yeah, I think I want this job.
Yeah, he's like, okay. So anyway, so they said, oh, we'll get. I said, look, I had been working in the place I'd worked for like 10 years, and I said, so I've got to give like 4 weeks notice. And they said, well, as it turns out, our machine's got to be repaired, and it's like 3 weeks of repair. Can you get a week taken off? So went and spoke to my boss I work with, and they're like, yep, no, not a problem. And then we had the house on the market, and the first day I was like mowing the lawns out the front, and then there was all these people standing on our front lawn. And I rang up the real estate agent. I said, mate, there's all these people standing on our front lawn for the first home open. And he's like, really? I go, yep. So our house sold on the first day it was for sale. we got more than we're asking. So within like literally overnight, we'd sold a house. I'd got a job, and we were moving.
Man,
So
Jehovah was hooking you up. His blessings.
yeah. And I think that was because I did that really good job as bellboy. That was Jehovah.
Yeah, that was, yeah. He's been waiting to hook you up for all that time.
Yeah. So literally, it was like we were like telling all our friends and stuff like we're off.
Yeah.
And I think they knew. That we were leaving. So yeah. So then we found a rental that only needed a 3-month lease. So we moved in there and, so had this job, and it was just like literally got a shipping container and just loaded all our stuff into a shipping container, and it got shipped over to Melbourne. And then, so when we came over, we were like, right, okay, what are we going to do? So we started, we went to a couple of meetings, but it was like I did the old just visiting from Perth. I thought I'm not going to get like aligned to any congregation because I knew what was going to come. So I was just like just visiting. So then and then I think I went to I was still going to the memorials back then. So my wife wasn't. And it was funny because then when and by this stage, I was just like, I'd worked out what was going on, like the love bombing, like, like our kids, like they had no meeting clothes either. You know what I mean? Because we didn't even, they're growing. We didn't.
Right. Why invest?
Yeah. So, when you see those people at the meetings, they rock up and their kids like aren't dressed like witness kids. Right. Do you know what I mean? Like my son would just have like shorts and sneakers on and, so we got love bombed big time. And people were just like, where you from? Go get your number and, we can hang out and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, sorry. So, yeah.
Did you just not give them your number, or did you give them how did you, I'm just wondering, how did you handle that?
That's what I'm saying. I was like, no, it's okay. Thanks.
Nice. Yeah.
I was just like, I'm done. I know what you're doing. Yeah. I said, I feel like I'm not stupid. I know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And so because we was couple, so then the elders, they said, come and have a chat. And they're like, oh, we just want to know a bit about you. I said, what do you want to know? I said, oh, yeah, I am baptized and I'm just visiting.
Yeah.
I said, I'm in transition. Oh, we're here to help you. And I was like, yep, sure you are. Sure you are. So, yeah, so that was that. And then I changed the jobs a couple of times, and then I'd reconnected with all my family and my friends that, my best friends that I'd grown up with that, they married and remarried and got kids and all that sort of stuff. So we had a social, thing. So we didn't really need the witnesses for that, so, and then my wife, we're looking at buying a new house, and so she rang me up. She goes, I found it. And I thought, found what? She says, I found a house. And I said, right. So we went and looked at it, and we bought the house we're in, and, settled the kids into the local school. And by this stage, I still hadn't listened to any anti-Jehovah's Witness stuff at all.
Right.
At all. And then my wife said, listen, I've listened to this. And it was this evil apostate who had this podcast called This JW Life.
Nailed it.
Satan himself. So, yeah, that was it, man. I listened to your podcast, and I was just like going, wow. How many episodes is it? I think I listened.
It's 9.
9, 2 days, man. I listened to it at work the whole lot. Yeah. And I was learning so much, and I'm just like going, how could I left school when I was 16, but I like to think that I'm somewhat smart. And I'm like, sure. How could I be this stupid? How could I be this naive? And I felt robbed. I felt just so pissed off. It was just like, no. Really, really angry.
Yeah.
Really, really angry. And
it's
then
like being pranked for decades.
Yep. And, and I'd be, and then that was it. That Pandora's box was open then, man, and then, so yeah, I remember listening to your podcast, and that's when I reached out to you and I sent you that, thanks, mate, it really, really opened my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, right, now's the transition. So yeah, that was tough. That was like to try to really, really, and then I'd contacted, oh, that's right. So this is when the international convention was on in Melbourne. So we'd moved here, and I thought all our friends from Perth were surely coming over, and I thought I won't contact them to say, hey, you're coming over. I'll just see what happens. One friend that was coming from Queensland, so I've been best man at 3 guys' weddings. So 2 of them have left, one's still in, and he's the one that's still in. So I was his best man at his wedding. His wife hates me with a passion. I hate her with a passion, so it's mutual. Like she got married the day after she turned 18. Like, so she's got no life experience. So we grew up together, and we had all these in-jokes and stuff, and she just couldn't tolerate that. She didn't want me in their wedding party because she was jealous. Do you know what I mean? That she couldn't control that part of his life. And, we went up and visited him, and, she's just, oh, God. Anyway, so they came down for the convention, and in Melbourne, I don't know if you've seen, there's the famous Flinders Street train station, and there's these massive clocks. And it's basically when you want to meet someone in the city, you say, I'll meet you under the clocks at Flinders Street. So that's just the meeting point. Mm-hmm. But it's a pedestrian crossing as well. So there's this pub across the road, the famous Young and Jackson's Hotel. And it's more of it's another thing, we'll meet you there. Right. So they like, they said, look, he rang me up and says, we're in town for the convention. I said, yeah, no worries. He said, do you want to meet up? I said, yep, fine. I said, I'll meet you at the clocks under the Flinders Street. He goes, oh, it's a bit busy. I said, we'll meet you at the Young and Jacksons. He goes, yep, fine. So we get there, and they're standing at the front, and they've got 2 kids, and they've got their lapels on, and I said, you're not going in? He goes, oh, no, we don't go inside pubs. I said, no, we're not going for a drink. I just going to, you can have a seat inside, I was thinking, oh, here we go. So we go out for lunch with them, and still all these people that I'd heard, we've been best friends with over in Perth, hadn't heard a thing. So we're about to get on the train to go home, and then my wife's phone rings, and it's one of the wives that like, oh, look, did you want to meet up? And they're like, oh, we're in the city. So they said, oh, we've got this apartment in town. Did you want to come up? So we were like, oh, and I was like, no, I'm done. I thought, no, okay, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So we went up there, and they'd all our so-called friends, they'd all been out for lunch together, and, they'd all had drinks and stuff like that. So they're all sleepy and lying on the beds and, not very chatty and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, all right. And they're like, so I was still on social media with them, and then like that night I'm looking at on Instagram and that, and they're all like out for dinner and all that. And I thought, surely you would, if you had a friend that lived in Melbourne, you would phone them up and say, did you want to catch up and all that. So the next day, the Sunday, we decided, all right, we'll go to the assembly, get there late, rock up, and then I get a text, look behind you, and it's these people they're all sitting together. We just 10,000 people at this convention, and we'd managed to sit 3 rows in front of all our old friends from Perth.
Wow.
And so, at lunchtime, we're talking to them, and they're like, oh, what are you doing tonight? And I said, oh, we were actually catching up with some other people. And they said, oh, look, we're all going out for dinner. So did you want to, we could probably meet you before we all go out for dinner. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. So then we sit down and we're watching it. And I was just like going, when did it become just, here, watch this TV? And I'm thinking, and everyone's got iPads, and I'm like going, this is, and I'm like, yeah, dude comes out, gives the talk, here, watch this thing on the TV, the big screens. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, this is shit. And I'm looking at, and so it's funny, our friends that we'd met, they had a boy, and I said, let's go. So when they did the song in between the last session, we just left. And I phoned my mate. I said, look, I'm not meeting you tonight. I said, we've left. We're not going. We're not. And he's like, oh, please, you can't, you can't, you got to make your kids come. And I said, no, I don't have to do anything. He goes, oh, yeah, but then you'll be blood guilty. And I said, what do you say? And he goes, you're blood guilty. And I said, mate, don't ever speak to me like that, mate, about my kids being blood guilty. And I said, do you want to, and so I lost it, and I'm telling him to F off and, you're no friend and blah, blah, blah. And, and that was that. And I remember I walked out there and I said, I'm never, ever, ever going back. So that was it.
It just shows, even your friends are trying to shame you and use the fear, obligation, and guilt, the blood guilt to manipulate you. And it's just a shame, because you have these people that you think are your friends, and then you realize that they're only your friends as long as you think and act and feel just like they do.
Yeah, well, one of this couple, they couldn't have kids. They went through IVF and all that, and like we left our kids in our will to them if something was to happen to us. Yeah. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
And now they won't even speak to us. Yeah. So by this time I was like, I think that's when I was like really, really thought, this is so. I ended up, what I did is that I literally deleted anyone that was a witness off any of my social media. They went. I just blocked them all, and I thought, you're not going to have that satisfaction of prying into my life to judge me. Do you know what I mean? So then I was getting calls like, dude, you're right. What's going on? And I said, no, it's all good. Oh, you've blocked me on whatever. And I went, oh yeah, I've come off it. And I thought, if I've got your number, I said, if you want to get in contact with me, you can phone me. So by this stage, and then around this time, my mum, she got motor neurons disease. So I think what do you call it, Lou Gehrig's disease?
Okay, yeah, Lou Gehrig's disease, yeah.
Yeah, so she'd left my dad. So when me and my sister had left home, it was just her and my dad, and mum was like, "Yep, well, I'm out of here." So she moved to London, because my sister had moved to London by this stage as well. So she had divorced my dad. She got a scriptural divorce. We still don't know how, because there was there was a dodgy elder in our hall, and I don't know, I don't even care anyway. But so she got married. She remarried to this guy who was a study, and then he became a witness, and so that's another story. But then she got diagnosed with motor neurons, and so she died within a year of diagnosis. So that was, and by this stage, this is when I was really, really coming out, but I was in a really, really dark place, and I was really, really ready to have it out with her. And, I channeled all my angst at her.
Right.
For making us do this religion stuff. So, and I thought, well, she's got a terminal illness. I thought, what, she's on a deathbed. Are you really going to go around there and, start getting, angry with her? And, because some of the stuff that, she did was like, I don't agree with. I don't think that's any way to bring up a child, So she passed away, and then we're kind of, that was pretty tough. And then the guy that she married had become an elder as well, and he passed away like 6 months after Mum.
Oh wow!
So we were kind of left to. He had 3 children that were still living in the UK, so we were. She lived on the border of Victoria and New South Wales, which is about a 3-hour drive north. So we were left to pick up, all that sort of stuff. And it's funny, he was I think he became the secretary in the hall where he was, and and then because they obviously the congregation knew that he died, this elder rocked up, and he's like, "How you going? I'm brother such and such from the hall." And I said, "Oh, how you going, mate?" And he's like, "Oh, I just need to get all the congregation business, because he's the secretary, and he had all the finance stuff and that." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll get it and I'll give it to you." And he goes, No, I'll grab it now. And then he pushed the door to come in, and it was just, I don't know what came over me. Must have been all channeled about elders. And I pushed the door back and I pushed him. I said, "You will get it when I give it to you, mate," like that. Mm-hmm. And he was shocked. I said, "That's right." And he was just like, "Oh, I know where it is and I'll be getting it." I said, "You won't be coming in, mate. I'm telling you that." And he was like, oh. And I thought,
Yeah, they're
Wow,
used to calling the shots.
it felt awesome.
Oh, I bet it did.
It felt awesome. This guy, he shit himself. He was just like, he's never been spoke to like that.
Yeah.
And I said, "When's your next meeting?" He goes, "Sunday." I said, I'll bring it there, and you can have it." Mm-hmm. So I went through it, and my God, I kid you not, the stuff I found in there, it's ridiculous. It's just so wrong, like committee case stuff, notes from all that sort of stuff, and I'm just like, so by this stage, his sons had flown over from the UK for the funeral and stuff, so they were like, had no idea about witnesses, so his funeral was in the hall, and they're like, What's with the word faithful? I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "What?" They kept saying my dad was a faithful. I said, "Oh, it's just the terminology that they use." And he goes, "If there's one thing my dad isn't, is faithful." So he had lots of affairs and stuff when they were growing up and all that sort of stuff. And I said, "Oh, look, he's a witness now. He's a changed man, and this, that, the other." And then we're cleaning out the stuff, and then he's want to hear his son go, "Faithful, I'll give you faithful." And there was like we found this box, and it had like nice writing paper in there. Mm-hmm. And underneath it had like a false bottom, and he had all these photos of women that he'd slept with, like a trophy thing. Mm. And I went, "Oh my God." And they're like going, "Oh, her, I remember her." It was like their neighbours and stuff like that. And he was an investment banker, and he never really got high up, and that was because that he was like, got himself into trouble and stuff like that. And I thought, well, I get that, the past is the past, but if you're an elder and you're dealing with people that have had affairs and stuff, and you're carrying around this dirty little secret.
Yeah, you can't carry that around, man.
And I was shocked. Yeah. And I was just like, wow. So I thought, you know what, it's not fair for him. I mean, he was good to my mum, I can't, so I thought that's, everyone's got their secrets and stuff. And they're like, "No, we're taking them." And they said, "We're taking his computer as well." And I said, "Look, that's got all the congregation business on it, like all the stuff about committee cases." And I read some of them, and it's like, it's grown men asking a young girl whether she touched someone on the outside or the inside of his pants, and this is no lie. Did you undo his zip, or did he undo his zip? The whole lot. And I'm like, it's all written down, and I'm reading this going, this is disturbing. Mm-hmm. This is so wrong that grown men are in a room asking this poor girl. Anyway, it had a name and a congregation on it, and I was actually considering sending it to her going, "By the way, next time you're in a committee case, just remember, don't say anything, because this, Yeah. But I thought that's not going to achieve anything.
Yeah, it's crazy how much they keep on people.
Yeah. I'd love to see my card, my record, what's on there.
Yeah. One of our friends in another state, I'll just keep it ambiguous, but let's just say that was he an elder? I think he was an elder, yeah. And he left, he faded. And on his way out, he went through the files and destroyed a bunch of notes about, like, Brother Bob Smith admitted he masturbated once when he, you know what I'm saying? Like, he went through and deleted, like, destroyed all that crap, which is pretty awesome. And I wish more elders would do that when they leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And I asked them when he took his computer, I said, "Can you just delete all that?" Yeah. They're like, yeah. So,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So, yeah, my mum had just died, and it was just, I was in a really, really bad spot. This is when I was really starting to learn a lot about the organisation and all the lies and all that sort of stuff. So I remember I was putting some washing in the washing machine, and something had happened, and I just snapped, and I was like, I kicked the washing basket, and I threw all the washing out everywhere, and then I looked up, and my kids were just looking at me.
Yeah.
And I was shocked, and I was just went, right, I need to do so. I need some help, because it was just a trigger. I was just, So what's good about the Australian government here. So I went to the doctor, and the government gives you a subsidy for seeing a psychologist or a specialist.
Mm-hmm.
So you get 8 visits, and they pay, the government pays half of it. So I said, said to the doctor, I said, look, I've had a couple of things and I think I need to speak to someone. So I went and got this appointment with this doctor, and I just got really, really lucky because she was a cognitive behavioural therapist.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so I didn't know what to expect. I just can't do I just can't be this person I've becoming, because I was really, really bitter and really, really nasty. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah, I understand.
Like, I would be like, and it was like, and I think I was like sucking my wife into this bad headspace as well. Be like going, oh, remember when such and such did this, and he slept with her before they were married, and they're shunning us, and how dare they, and it was just a whirlpool of just negativity and just real bad headspace. So I went there, and it's funny, and I was just like, I started going, I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't know what I would be saying. You know what I mean? I just thought I'll start with my mum. I said, I've got these really, really resentment towards my mum about, and by that stage, my cousin was turning 40, and she was having her 40th birthday, and I'd never been to a birthday party before, and I really wanted to go, but I just couldn't get myself there. And so, and it's funny because I kept on saying, oh, doctor. She says, look, call me doctor. Call me Natasha. And I just started laughing. And I said, and she says, what are you laughing at? I said, do you know what your name is spelt backwards? She goes, no. I said, it's R Satan. Because one of my friends, he had a girlfriend called Natasha, and she was a right bitch, and we used to call her R Satan. So she was like, and she's writing it down. She goes, oh, so it is. I said, yeah. So we're taught in witnesses that go in to speak to psychologists and that, and open up your headspace, and it's like you're inviting Satan and the demons into your life. I said, it's just ironic that your name's Natasha, So she's laughing at that. So, yeah, so she starts, so I go through my whole story, and, and she's writing stuff down, and, she's like, yep. And she didn't really understand the witnesses, how they worked. And then she says, well, I definitely will need to see you again. So the next week I came, and like, I was like, same, thing. And she says, right, yep. You told me that last week. And I went, all right, okay. She says, like, okay, I know your story. Now, I'm going to start giving you the tools to how to cope, kind of thing. And I was like, all right. I just thought you went there and just, you lied on a couch and just, woe is me, and, my mum treated me bad, or my dad, So she says, basically, you need to I said, do I need this? And she says, oh, yes, you do. And she says, she's laughing. She says, look, you need to learn the tools, how to process and change your way of thinking. So this birthday, why aren't you going? I said, because it's pagan. I said, there's candles. John the Baptizer lost his head at a party, and he says, okay, but is that what you're going there for? I said, no. And she says, well, you need to change that I'm going there to, be with my cousin and say, I love you, and I'm glad that you're in my life.
No, reframing
said,
things.
Yes, and I said, well, that's not what birthdays are. They said, well, that's their interpretation. You've got to start having your own interpretation of things. So, and so she says, basically, the best thing, she said, when you first get your license to drive a car, and the first thing they teach you is like, right, when you get into a car, adjust your seat, adjust your mirror, adjust your side mirror, put your seatbelt on. And every time you get into a car, you physically have to do that. So after time, you don't even think about doing it. Every time you get into the car, it's just that instant thing that you do. So she says, you need to reprogram the way you think, the way that, so every time you go, oh, I can't do that, you got to go, well, I can do that. And, do different words like I should. Do you know what I mean? So, and really, really understand that it's, all the doctrine is the organization's interpretation, and to start thinking for yourself. So I was like, right, okay. So, and then boy, that was I think if we would have had this chat a year ago, it would have been a little bit more dark. But now I don't blame my mum for raising us as witnesses. She loved us kids, and she thought in her head that she was doing the best thing for us.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? So
I know what you mean. Yep.
yeah. So I'm at that place now that I think the anger's gone. I still get frustrated. I still want to still read things, and but I've learnt that people that shun us and don't talk to us, I think, well, it's not their fault. That's what they're taught to do. Mm-hmm. So
their intent, they think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, but I've also learned I've had to set boundaries. That why would I let someone into my inner sanctum that's going to criticize, call me blood guilty, or judge me? So
that's a boundary.
Yep. So I've literally cut people off. Like I've preempted the shunning by cutting them off, deleting numbers, and understanding that one day hopefully we might reconnect and we might be able to continue the friendships and stuff. But I doubt it's going to happen. So I've got
unless
zero.
They change. Yeah.
Yep. And the same with my sister. I've got zero expectation. We've got an agreement that I told her, I said, look, I never wanted to get baptized. I said I was forced to do it. I didn't want to do it. So I think it's not fair that you should shun me for, something that, and she says, no, I agree with that. So our agreement is that not to talk about it, but they can't help it. It's just little things like if I send her, oh, did you hear about this happen? And she'd be like, yep, time of the ends. It's a sign. Do you know what I mean? Like those little things.
It's everything. It's who they are. It's their identity. It's not just a part of them. Yeah.
So no, but I think definitely I think going and speaking to someone that's a proper, like especially someone that's a cognitive behavioral therapist to change the thought process and the patterns, it's the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, it helps to talk to somebody else about something.
And give you the tools to process, because the journey is like, and I think that's as well, like listening to your podcast, and that really, really, it's like you're not alone kind of thing. This journey is a journey that many people have been on before.
Yes, and many people have been on it and come out the other side, gotten the help that they need, and lived good lives. It doesn't have to be something that destroys your life. It hurts, and it's good to feel your feelings and to allow them to be. And then at some point we have to start challenging the ways that we think. We have to start becoming aware of the patterns that we play out in our lives from our previous life, and start challenging those things. And you can definitely be a lot happier. Yeah, definitely. So, so that was it. And so just understanding now that literally I think I've managed to get rid of that anger and that frustration. And, once I wanted to picket a memorial, because it was the same time at the Australian Royal Commission came out. And when I Googled where the hall was, the first thing popped up was a story about how some young girl was molested by a dude in the hall. When I was looking for the address, because I typed in Kingdom Hall, Plenty Valley, and the first thing was this brother that molested this young girl, and he's still allowed to go to meetings because he's can't afford to keep up the fight anymore legally, and he's taken a leaf out of Jesus' book and turned the other cheek. And that was what he said in his statement. But he's a registered sex offender. And then they found out that he had sent her a private message on Facebook saying, I'm sorry for the hurt that I've caused you. And she came out and showed everyone that, and then he's found guilty. So anyway, I was because I work at with paper and that, I wanted to make signs and picket the memorial. That's where I was at. Yeah. And I like that, it seems like you are, I think one of the things that allays, so anger is often something, it's a secondary emotion. It covers up things like just tremendous pain, sorrow, sadness. And it's one of the things that you can do to get around anger or sadness or any of that stuff is to implement understanding.
Yeah.
And what it seems like you're starting to do is to there's a term called perspective taking. You're taking the perspective of even like your mom, and seeing the intent that was there, and she was doing the best that she could with the tools she had that came probably from the experiences. She had trauma early on in her life that was probably never dealt with.
Yeah.
And you see these things get passed down, and typically it's not malicious. It's people repeating patterns and not knowing what they're doing.
Yeah.
And once you can start to understand those things, it doesn't get rid of all the anger. I can hold in one hand anger toward my mom, and I can also hold in the other hand understanding for where she was coming from. And on most days, understanding wins out. But there are days where the anger comes up, and that's okay. You have to just let that be. It's okay as long as it's not dominating your life.
Yeah, it's funny because I was stuck at the traffic lights, and there was a witness cart, and there was this couple just like sitting down on their phones in the witness cart, and I felt like going, that's not witnessing. I said, going 2 hours Saturday mornings, knocking door after door after door, and I was getting frustrated, and I went down my window, and I was just about to go, you can't count time for this. This is bullshit, And I thought, what's that going to achieve? They're going to think, well, he's this crazy man, like abused. And I thought, they don't need to be abused. Do you know what I mean? Like, they don't need that, Like, I remember when I was, doing it and, getting teased and stuff like that. It's not cool. So I just,
much better ways if you want to have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So
it sounds like, you're not officially out, right? I mean, you didn't disassociate or anything, you just faded, right?
No, well, and I think it was something either that you'd said or someone had said about, I was going to disassociate myself. And then I thought, well, I'm not even going to play that game anymore. I don't recognize my baptism. I don't recognize any of that. So why should I give them the opportunity? So actually it was funny because this local brother, he knocked on our door, and I was polite, and I was like, how you going, mate? This, that, the other. And I was out the front, and I was doing some work on my garden, and and I thought he was talking about the garden, and I said, I want to redo my driveway, but you got to get council approval. And I thought, how is he going to segue this? And I said to him, so I want to redo this driveway, but, I've got to get council approval. And then he's done the old, do you know one day there's a possibility to live somewhere that you won't need council approval? And I went, really? And he goes, yep. I said, let me guess, it's a paradise on earth? And he went, oh. I said, yeah, mate, look, I was brought up a witness. I said, I like your segue, mate. That was good. I like the way, And I was polite to him.
Sure.
And he said, and he goes, oh, do you want the magazines? I said, look, mate, if I want to read anything, I can go on to jw.org. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day. He goes, okay. Next Saturday, he's back. And I'm like, oh, here you go, mate. He goes, oh, just after a conversation. And then I was just like, mate, go away. I said, I was polite the first time. Go away. And he goes, oh, you don't have to be like that. I said, I was polite, And then he says something. He says, oh, we've got the memorial something coming up. I said, oh, it's all shit, mate. It's all this. I said, the governing body of this, that, the other. I gave it to him. And he was shocked. I said, yeah, well, if you would listen to the first time. 2 weeks later, he's back, and he's got this guy with him. And I'm looking at him, and I went, I know you. And it was one of the elders from my hall growing up. And he just looked at me and he goes, Matthew. And his name was Steve Barge. And there was a comedy show over here called Barge Ass. So we used to call him Barge Ass. And, have you seen the movie Stand By Me?
No,
Oh, well, anyway, but there's a bit that when he walks on the stage, they call him Lard Ass. So every time he used to walk up to the platform, we go, Barjas. Anyway, so he's blind as a bat. He's got these big Coke bottle glasses, and he's looking at me, and he's like, Matthew. And this other guy's like, oh, do you know each other? I said, oh, yeah, me and Steve go way back. And he goes, oh, that's right. And he's spilling out all the stuff about like that party that we got publicly reproved on, and telling all. He goes, oh, yeah, he did this, and when he was a kid, he did this, and I'm like, mate, I did some good stuff as well. Like it's not all doom and gloom. And anyway, and this other guy's like going, oh yeah, and now this guy's a circuit overseer, so Steve's a circuit overseer, and he goes, oh, because he's someone special, I thought have a chat. And he's like, oh, you raised some concerns about you don't believe the governing body and all this. And I thought, hang on. And by this time I worked out that you can get disfellowship when there's two people hearing it. Mm-hmm. So I thought he's trying to trap me.
Absolutely.
And he goes, yeah, you said, that you don't believe the governing body. And I went, I never said that. And he goes, you did. And he was getting angry. And I went, mate, I think you might have got the wrong end of the stick here, brother. And he was seething. He goes, and then you told me this. And Steve's going, look, calm down. Like to this. He goes, he said it, And I thought, yeah, he's trying to get me. So whether they worked out who I was and Steve knew who I was, that was enough to get me disfellowshipped. So I've just done the old, no, I didn't say that, brother. No. Oh, and I've done the old, I'm actually thinking about coming to the meeting on Sunday. And I'm like, and Steve goes, oh, that's good. I'm giving the talk. And I'm like, oh, I used to love your talk, Steve. Oh yeah, I might bring the kids. So I'm lying. And then this guy, he is seething. Anyway, so they leave. And I thought, yeah, he was trying to get me to say something in front of a circuit overseer so they could disfellowship me or whatever. So, and then he started coming back, but he was driving past to see if my car was there. And then when I was at work, he was knocking on the door to try to get my wife at home. And she wouldn't answer. And she told me, he goes, oh, he's back. So I thought, I've had enough of this prick. So I rang the hall and I said, hey, and this guy, I don't know who he was. I said, you can tell, I forget his name. I said, you tell that old guy that wears that hat, if he comes to my house again, I'm going to call the cops or I'm going to beat him up. And he's like, oh, what? And he goes, oh, can I get your name? And I said, no, I'm not giving you a name. I said, he knows exactly who it is. I said, you tell him he comes again when I'm not at home. And I said, I've had enough. It's unacceptable. And he goes, oh, and he hasn't shown up since.
Yeah, those are unfortunately parts of the games that you do have to play.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. If it wasn't for me listening to all this stuff, I wouldn't understand that having two people
they're
that's
trying
enough
to trap you.
Well, not that I care anyway, but because my wife's family still goes, we want to keep a relationship with her family. And it's funny, her oldest niece was supposed to get married, and she called off the wedding 4 weeks before the wedding, and we're like, the family's devastated, and we're like, yep, you beauty, because he was abusive. He was like, I'm the man. You'll it's all come out that he was like, you'll do what I say. I'm the head of the household, this, that, the other.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. So, but when we were talking about coming over for the wedding, we just said to them, look, you understand that when we come over, because it's going to be, I don't know what his family's like, that we're not witnesses, we're non-witnesses. And they're like, oh, what do you mean by that? I said, well, just expect that when we come over that we're not witnesses. And they said, are you disfellowshipped or disassociated? And we said, no. And they said, oh, well, we don't care then.
Yeah. Yep. Which just shows,
Yeah, they can play the game.
It's silly,
Yeah, so they can choose to be a part of our lives, but if I was disassociated or disfellowshipped, then they would have to make that choice. So
and it shows that it is a choice on a level.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. That they know what they're doing.
Yeah. So, and I think that's why it's best not just fade.
Sure.
I mean, like, I've heard that, when you get your disassociated letter, they don't even read it. They just, it makes no impact that you can write how you feel, whatever. it's not going to change anyone's life. I just don't give them the satisfaction. Just.
Yeah, I'm quite frankly a proponent of disassociation, but
Oh, really?
as someone who did it myself, because it ends the game and puts a bullet in it all.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
but
So
but
what do they? Does your card get permanently stamped?
oh, I'm sure there's a file that says that I'm disassociated or whatever. I never encourage anyone to do it lightly. Anyone who
Yeah.
does it needs to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And while they may not read the letter, I never tell anybody to write a letter of disassociation for the purpose of waking someone up or hoping that it's read
Yeah.
and makes some big impact. But it's, to me, a disassociation letter is for you. It's for you to
True.
write whatever you need to get out of your heart, and to have the closure that you need to have. But I also understand that there are people out there that seek to keep, certain family members and are willing to play certain games in order to do so and to fade. And I think that's great too. I think it's just different. It's different strokes for different folks. Everybody's got to find their way out, the way that suits them and that fits them. But
True.
I quite frankly, I'm, it's not a popular opinion, but I think that there is a very unfair malignment of those who disassociate, and that there are certain talking points about it that are not well reasoned. And I've had conversations with a lot of ex-witnesses about it, and it doesn't typically go well. But but in the end, it's just a matter of get out however it is that you feel comfortable with, and make the decision that you're going to be okay with. For some people, an elder showing up at their house, like what happened to you, would be very traumatic, and they need, they may need to do something that effectively ends the game and puts up a boundary between them and those elders, because they couldn't take it. And I would never judge anybody, for that. Just whatever it is that you got to do to get out and go be happy. That's all that matters in the end. And I think it's cool that you've been able to keep family through this. If that was a goal of yours, and it does show that, when you do disassociate, some of your family is going to have to shun you. Of course, for a lot of people, like even us, we were shunned before we ever left. So, it's there's so many circumstances there. But I think that it's great that you're able to still connect to that aspect of your wife's family. And, I hope that you all have been able to have some good times, out of that.
Yeah. Well, we haven't really caught up with them since we haven't actually been in their presence, because they're in the UK kind of thing.
That's hard.
Yeah. But my daughter put stuff on Instagram that they would see that, she's at a birthday party and all that. So it's almost like, well, they're probably over there learning to deal with it. It's the same as we are. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So,
and it's good, it keeps your kids get to have their grandparents and all that. And probably at some sort of a safe distance where your grandparents aren't indoctrinating your children to hate you, which unfortunately happens a lot.
And I hope that when daughter turns 18, she can have a gap year from school, go traveling Europe. She got somewhere to stay over there, and
that'd be beautiful. Yeah, that'd be great. So what is something that you've learned since you left? I mean, I know you did some therapy, some CBT, CBD. That's a whole different thing. It's cannabis oil. So what is something that you have learned since leaving that has really impacted your life for the better?
I think for me is I've really, really learnt now to detach, say, the organisation to the Bible, and really understand that they're not the Bible's mouthpiece. I kind of view that anyone that believes in the Jehovah's Witness religion, like people that still believe that the earth is flat, do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that the evidence against it is so overwhelming that I don't, if you believe the earth is flat and you're not hurting anyone, good on you. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? You know, if you've got that whack belief, then fair enough. Same with witnesses now. Like, I wouldn't even try to enter in a doctrine debate or prove you wrong or whatever, because it's just so whacked and it's so untrue that it's pointless. It's like you're dealing with someone that still believes the earth is flat. You know, like, if you're not hurt and if you're happy doing it, then you go for it. But I've really now detached from the society being the one true religion interpretation from the Bible, you know. And now I've done that. I'm at peace. Do you know what I mean? I don't fear that. The fear's gone. You know, like, we had a thunderstorm last night, and I'm like, oh God, Armageddon's coming. You know, you know, I'm not that way, and now I'm kind of like, well, the Bible, you know, like, okay, well, what's with that now? Do you know what I mean? I've detached the two, and you know, it's funny that, like, our Aboriginal, our Indigenous Australians, they talk about creation. They call it the dream time, and they don't write stuff down, but they pass the stories on for generation to generation. Like, they that's how they have been since however they first come to Australia. And one of the stories they've got is called the rainbow serpent. And so basically, the rainbow serpent was there at creation, and the earth was flat. He traveled the earth looking for things, and there was no trees, no water anyway. So then he summoned the frogs to come out from the earth, and he tickled the frogs, and the frogs coughed up all the water they had in the bellies, and they created all the rivers of the oceans and all that sort of stuff. And then he said to anyone, you know, if you really behave and follow me, then we'll make you humans. So then the animals turned into humans, and then and then it flooded. So the earth flooded, and some of the humans were scared, and the rainbow serpent said, "Jump in my mouth, and I'll protect you." And then so these humans jumped, or something like that, and they jumped in his mouth, and then he ate these people, and he'd done the wrong thing. Anyway, so the earth was flooded, and then because he felt so guilty, he summoned himself to the sky, and to say sorry, he made himself as a rainbow. So the Aboriginal people, when they see a rainbow, for them it's the rainbow serpent, you know. And you think, oh, that's a great fictitious story of Dreamtime and that. But it's funny how they're similar with the flood and the rainbow. And then you think, you know, like, as if there's a big rainbow serpent, and then you think, well, as if there's a 7-headed coloured scarlet wild beast. You know, like that. And I'm thinking, there's no difference. You know, the Bible has all these whack stories of demonized goats jumping off cliffs and, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And I'm thinking, you know, that's very familiar. Like, you know, the ark, you know, like the Noah's Ark. Like, do you know how many land species of animals there are? There's
way more than
8.7 million land animals, right? How did Noah get all those animals onto the ark? You know, we're just going to put that in the trust in Jehovah shelf. Oh, you know, Jehovah would have sorted that. No, it's no different to the Aboriginal Dreamtime of this rainbow serpent. It's fictitious. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I know what you mean. I'm of a similar view. I understand that not all are, but that's my view as well.
Yeah, you know, and I'm thinking, like, you can't mock, like, you know, that's what the Aboriginal people believe, you know. You know, that frogs, you know, created the rivers and all that, but is it any different to, you know, what the Bible teaches?
I remember being with a witness one day who was making fun of the Book of Mormon and and Joseph Smith and the supposed golden plates and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, have you looked at the Bible? There's a lot of magic going on in there but we believe in that one, and the other one we don't believe in. So, you know, it's just,
you know, look at the Book of Revelation. Like, what is, you know, that's God, like the stuff in that book.
Revelation is pretty interesting.
You know, so now, and I think now it's just like, so that's what I've definitely learned, that like I've detached now. I can see, I know I still listen to your podcast and that, because I still have to nail these doubts. Like when they creep up, you have to just keep hammering him down and down, like, oh, what if it is true? What if I am, you've just got to really, really, me personally, like my other mates are like going, what do you keep listening to that crap for? And I'm like, because this is my journey. You can walk away and wipe your hands of it and just like, yeah, whatever. But for me, I was really into the book of Daniel and, and all that, the history part of it, so I just remember that, we're over when the book study, when we're doing the Daniel book, like some of it, everyone's like going, that was pretty intense, and then like my mother-in-law was like, oh, I don't really care. As long as there's good biscuits to have with a cup of tea after, I'm happy, like that's her journey. That's where she's at. She's probably looking at like going, I've got no idea what this book's about, but, I'm trying to understand it and, to get it and all that. And, so everyone's different.
Yeah. First of all, I like that your friends call my podcast crap. That's hilarious.
No, no, not your. Like if I say, "Oh, did you hear this has happened?" Like, or the society's just been subpoenaed in America, and they're like, "Oh, what do you listen to that? What do you read that crap for?"
Well, but honestly, I think that, and it's like what you said. People have their own journeys out. Some of us. My wife was able to just drop it pretty easily. For me, I was really in. I was very into all this witness stuff, and it's not something that's just going to disappear from my life. And I am interested in it for different reasons. And like you said, everybody has to go on their own journey. Unfortunately, I think that there are also a lot of people who downplay those who kind of still get into it to some degree because they haven't yet on their journey been able to face it.
Yeah, because I've noticed as well that if we go to barbecues and that with people that witnesses, eventually it ends up on the witnesses, and
of course
it gets talked about, and then, like some people get like, oh, we're going over this again, are we? But you can't help it.
Yeah, I agree. And, everybody has to find their own way out in their own journey. Unfortunately, I get a lot of people who reach out to me who've been out for decades and are just now starting to look at it, and, we were programmed to leave in shame and to not look at it and to look down upon those who do look at it. So, it's something that we all just have to figure out for ourselves, how much of that we can handle and where we want to go with it. So you've got this new life. It sounds like, so how long would you say that you've really been both out and awake?
I think I would say that when I left that convention, even though I think I went, that was it. I think that was, is it every 4 years they come? Because there's one coming this month in Melbourne.
Something like that.
So I'd say 4 years was the last out. But like I said, so then the transition to, so my kids' birthdays were this last weekend. So that was the second time that we've had their birthdays. And, I would say that, that's why when I said to you, I'd like to tell my story, because it's, again, part of my journey. And I think it's helpful for other people, but I think it's helpful for yourself as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's very cathartic to tell the story. And then people find it very cathartic to listen back later. And it gives you a different perspective. What do you enjoy about your new life since you've been out and awake? It's like this massive weight that's off your shoulders, but then you think, all right, well, what now? But, having 3 kids, it keeps you busy, but we're invested in them, I coach his soccer team, so for the last 3 years I've coached his soccer team. So it's like run the training and all that, and just family stuff now, reconnecting with family. And we've done a lot of traveling, we've been to Vietnam 3 times now. We've, taken the kids, Cambodia, Japan, just travel. We really, really love Vietnam. The first time we went there, we were there for a month, just love the people, the culture, everything about it, and it's funny. I was reading something about that race, man, they've had it tough. They have had it really tough, not just the Vietnam War, but before that, how the French
try to colonize them, and they're fighting and that. But it's funny that one thing I read about when the French were trying to colonize Vietnam is that there was a lot of trouble back at home because it was the end of the dynasty, with the French Revolution and that. And what happened is that the French, the aristocrats, and that was a really, really divide in the poor people and the rich people. And the poor people were really, really suppressed, and they didn't want the poor people uniting, kind of thing. So they would try to suppress them. They didn't want them meeting on corners, having at cafes and stuff. They really wanted them downtrodden. And when the murmurings got out, and then the rich people found out about it, they thought, well, what are we going to do here? Because there's going to be a rebellion. And what they did is they really, really brought in patriotism and nationalism. And they thought, France is the best country ever. If you speak against France, you're speaking against your own people, and to try to squash that rebellion. And then eventually, it was the levee broke. And I thought that's exactly what the witnesses do, man. Like exactly, they want to suppress the people. They want to keep them uneducated. They want to keep them, and they provoke their nationalism or patriotism as like anyone that speaks against the organisation is an apostate. Even though everything the apostates say, it's not made up. It's funny. I sent my sister the scripture in Deuteronomy, the one that says that if anyone speaks in my name as a prophet and it doesn't come through, they're to be feared.
Yep.
And I sent her the picture of the Watchtower article that says, this generation will not pass away.
Mm-hmm.
So that's coming from the society. That's not coming from me. I'm not an apostate. I haven't made that up.
Mm-hmm.
But her alarm bell is apostate, 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 like the French did, to try to suppress, because that's what the society teaches.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it's just so funny how it's so relatable.
Yeah, and then they want you to leave and be quiet and not meet and not organize and not be united in any way.
Yep. And now the internet's out. They can't stop the murmuring.
Yep.
And they can't stop the murmuring. They can't stop the dissatisfaction like the French people went through. And we all know that old Louis lost his head, and that's what's going to happen, hopefully. So
that would be nice. That would be nice.
Yeah.
So what about your new life going forward? Do you have any dreams for it? Anything that you're hoping to make out of it? Now, I know you kind of talked about, and I think it was a good point. It struck me, which was, you left this big thing, and then it's kind of like, well, what am I going to do with my life? And then you talked about how, you have family and blah, blah, blah. I think a lot of people, when they leave this, it is very tough because you had something that it was your identity. It dominated your entire life. Structure. You felt like you had a savior complex. Let's face it. We all thought we were saving the world. Yep. And so now you come out, and there is a beauty in being able to just be.
Yep.
To be with yourself, to be happy, to be with your family, to enjoy the day, to be present. The practice of mindfulness, things like that. Those are very beautiful things that can really help us to just enjoy the moment. We don't have to be anything more than that. If we want to choose to, that's fine. But I think sometimes it's great to just practice the art of just being present and being yourself, and that's good enough. And then if you want to add stuff, you can.
I can't sit, like I have all these ideas and stuff I want to achieve, but I don't know how to do it. Like I'll buy books and I'll physically don't know how to sit and take time out and read it. You know what I mean? I've got all these dreams, or not dreams, like I bought a camera and I've done this, online photography course, and it's now like, I think I've done nearly 3 years of re-enrollment. I'm not even halfway through. I don't know if it's just my personality thing or the fact that I just don't know how to not take it's hard with kids and stuff because we're quite invested with them. I'm almost like, I overcompensate. I know I do, because I thought I don't want them to have to go through what I went through. It's funny. I always had like no name shoes growing up.
Oh yeah.
And I used to get picked on. So I'm adamant that our kids always have good shoes.
Yep.
they probably don't even care or don't even want them. But I'm like, no, no, you know, or
Yep.
the young fella was like, Dad, I'm bored. And I'm like, bored? I'll give you a briefcase and you can go knock on doors for 2 hours. Then tell me how you feel then. Oh, it's funny. You know, so I'm just like, you know, I just want to give them the best that I never had, you know, and I've talked to my mate about this I said, do you reckon you overcompensate? And he goes, 100%, man. Like his wife, the kids will go, Mum, can I have some money? And she's like, no. And he's like, yeah, take it. You know, like, you know, you can't help it.
Yeah.
You know, like if they, you know, we're pretty firm, but we're fair, you know,
Sure.
like just want to make sure that they, you know, am I overly invested?
Have good lives.
Yeah. It's almost like,
and not to feel some of the ways that you had to feel.
Yeah, you know, and teaching them critical thinking, you know, and I'll tell my daughter that, like, you know, I'll say my niece that got engaged, I said, you know, they're not even allowed to be in the room together without, and she's like, what? I said, yeah, well, that's what they teach. Mm-hmm. She's, oh, that's whacked. I go, yep, it is. We don't bag with the witnesses or say it's all right. We just explain to her that's the doctrine, you know, like that's what it is. Yep. She's like, you know, she remembers the meetings. She goes, oh, I just remember it being so boring. And I said, well, it used to be 4 days assemblies when I was your age. 4 days, man, sitting there. No iPads, no nothing.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I can't imagine. Boy, if I had an iPad, that would have been great. I could have been online doing anything. Yeah. Well, so it sounds like you've got some good aspirations. Sounds like you have some things that you're interested in. It's a challenge for a lot of people with kids and just a lot of people without kids to sit down and put themselves first, to really invest in themselves. That's something that we weren't taught to do as Jehovah's Witnesses. No. I mean, whether it comes down to investing in therapy or coaching or some sort of hobby that you're interested in or whatever, we really weren't taught to enjoy this life. So it's something we all have to struggle to get to a point of. But so now let me just ask you, I hear there's a story that needs to be told here.
I've got two. The first one.
Okay, let's go with them. Let's end on some stories.
Oh, okay. So I've got loads. I've just tried to pick the ones that. So the first one was when we were living over in Perth. We used to play a lot of like table tennis, you know, like ping pong, right? And I come up with this thing. So whenever the score was like 19-14, 19 points to 14, I used to go Cedar Point, Ohio. Score is 19-14. Judge Rutherford to serve. And if you won the point, you'd go, advertise, advertise, advertise. You know? So that was the joke. Anyway, so, and because I was working a lot of night shift at the time, we, you know, what'd you do on the weekend? Play ping pong, you know. So we set up a little ping pong table on night shift and we would play and stuff like that. And then the day shift would come in and we were playing ping pong and talking up who's the best. And then we said, oh, look, we have to have a tournament. We'll have a ping pong tournament and we'll work out who's the best ping pong player. So I was telling the guys, the brothers in my hall that I played with, I said, oh, we're organising this ping pong tournament. And they said, oh, we've got the day off as well. We'll come. So we were at someone's house and we, you know, have this ping pong tournament and then them two were playing and the score gets to 19-14. And then my mate's just gone, 19-14, Judge Rutherford to serve. And then and all my workmates are going, what was that? And we're just like, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? Anyway, the next game, the two workmates are playing and guess what? The score gets to 19-14. And then they go, hang on, what do we have to say again? And I'm like, no, don't worry about it. And they go, no, it was funny. I said, so you have to say 19-14, Cedar Point, Ohio, Judge Rutherford to serve. And then when you win the point, you have to go advertise, advertise, advertise. And they're all laughing and carrying on thinking this is great, you know, and we're just looking at each other going, oh, my God. So anyway, get to work and then we are playing. And then I'm working and the other boys are playing ping pong and they're running over and they're going, what's the guy's name again? Judge what? And I'm like, oh, Judge Rutherford. like this. So he gets on the loudspeaker because we're on night shift, and he's like going, advertise, advertise, advertise. And I'm like, no.
Are you starting your own cult?
Yes. And they're like, where'd you get that from? I'm like, oh, don't worry about it.
Oh, yeah, long story.
Long story. So now every time they play ping pong, when the score is 19-14, they're shouting out Cedar Point, Ohio, Judge Rutherford. So that was a good one. But the best one was our me and my best mate's infamous Bethel trip. So I think we're about 18 at the time. And so Bethel is in Sydney, which is about 9 hours north. So there was a football game on that we wanted to go on. And there was two brothers that we'd grown up with who'd gone to Bethel. So we'd done the old, we're going to go do a Bethel tour, but we really wanted to go to the football. So we went up, caught the bus up, went to the football, and then the next day, the Sunday, we had to go to the Bethel. So after the football, we're like, what do you want to do? You know, this is our first bit of freedom, and where we were staying was right near the casino. And we'd never gambled or anything before, so we're like, let's go to the casino. Like, all right. So we go to the casino, but to get in, you had to have a collared shirt. So the only shirt I had was my meeting shirt that I was going to wear the next day to Bethel. So I thought, I'll just wear that, you know. So I go in there and we sit down at the blackjack table, and the croupier's like, do you want to play? And we're like, yep. She's like, $20. Give her $20, play blackjack, one hand, done. She's like, do you want to play again? I said, yeah. She says, it's another 20. And I went, what? She's like, oh, yeah. We sat on a $20 hand table. And we're like, oh, okay. So we both give her another 20, lose that. I had 20 left, and I thought, no, I'm not walking out a loser. Give her 20, both lose it. I lost $60 in 3 hands, and we're spewing. That's all the money we had. So he's like, my mate's like, oh, you're an idiot. Why'd you pick that? I said, I didn't know. So we leave. And then as we're leaving the casino, there's like this little bridge that we're at the back of the casino, and there's like a wishing well that people can throw money in and chips. And some people hadn't made the wishing well, so there was like this little pond near the wishing well. And he's like, there's money in there. And I said, he goes, go get it. I said, I'm not getting it. That's stealing. He goes, we've already gambled. So he goes, I said, I'm not doing it. He goes, do it. So typical me, shoes off, pull my pants up, wade out, and I'm picking up all these chips that people had donated and stuff into the wishing well. So stealing this money. We go back in, and then we win. We play blackjack, and we win, and we win, and we win. And I don't know how much we won, but the carts with the drinks on it, we're ordering cocktails and stuff like that. We're buying people drink at the table. I'm giving people like who'd lost their money, their chips and the whole lot. Then we go up into like the nightclubs and the bars and up there, and might get into a fight. Right. And then I don't know what time we got home. Anyway, so we wake up in the morning, and we're like, the alarm goes off, and we're like, we've got to go to Bethel. I said, no, I'm not going. And he's like, mate, we've got to go because their mums will tell our mums that we never went, and we're done. So we're hungover. We get on the train, and I thought, oh, my shirt. No, I think, where's my shirt? My shirt's rolled in the ball. And you know the nightclub smoke, that smell?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
My shirt stinks of this nightclub smoke. And I'm like, oh, no. So I'll get my can of deodorant, and I'm spraying my shirt with my deodorant. And it's got all beer stains and all sorts of stuff on it. And I'm like, it's middle of summer, so I have to put my meeting jacket over the top, you know. So we get on this train, get to Bethel, and like we're seedy as, hungover. And these two brothers that we'd grown up with, they're there to pick us up. Anyway, so they pick us up, and they said, oh, we'll give you the tour. And I was like, oh, all right. And so they give us the tour, and then we get to the printing department, and he's like, oh, this is Matt, you know, he's a printer, and this guy had worked in Melbourne as well. So he's like, oh, you know, you must know such and such. And I'm just like, yep. And I could just, you know, when you sweat, I could just smell booze coming out of me, and I'm just like, I'm friggin' hot. I've got stains on my jacket, the whole lot. So I didn't know that there's some hierarchy of tables at Bethel, you know, where you sit and all that. So these printers, hey, they said, oh, you know, you're coming for the lunch. And I was like, yeah, all right. And they said, oh, we'll put you on our table as a guest. And apparently that's some big thing. And my mate's pissing himself off. And he's like, you know, he's up at the back, you know, and I'm on this front table with, and the dude that was giving it is like some big headshot, you know. and he's talking to me, oh, you're visiting from Melbourne? I'm like, oh, don't speak. I could just smell booze on me. So anyway, so get through that. And we go back to their rooms, their little dorms. Anyway, so we're both CDOs. I'm sitting on the bed and there's this knock on the door. And then these two country brothers had come in and they had all these leather products and crap to sell, and I'm like, oh, what? And they had like Bible covers and belts and stuff like that. Anyway, so they're like, oh, do you want to buy any of the stuff? And my mate's like, no. Nah. And I said, I'll take one back for me mum or whatever. And they had these nice leather belts. And I thought, oh, yeah, I'll buy one. I said, I don't think I've got any money. And I open up my wallet and there's hundreds and hundreds from the gambling the night before. And they're like, wow. And I went, oh yeah. And there's like, so I only had $50 notes as well. So I gave them a 50 and I'm like, oh, just keep the change, They're like, no, we can't do that. So I ended up with like a songbook cover, a Bible cover, a belt, the whole lot, and I'm like, they give it to me and and my mate's just like, he's pissing himself laughing and that. So we get all this stuff and then we leave Bethel and he's like going, I can't believe you just bought belts from Bethel Brothers from stolen gambling, So we're sitting on the train. Anyway, so he's laughing and that. And we're at about 20 minutes before the train left. And he goes, oh, show me all the stuff you've got. I said, oh, all right. So I show him. And then he pulls out this belt and he just starts laughing. I said, what is it? He goes, they'd stamped it like with the leather. They'd stamped it like with wording.
Right.
And it said like on the back of it, had like Jehovah is my shepherd or Jesus or something like that. And he's laughing, and I was just like, oh, forget that. So I picked up the bag, I ran off the train, and I dumped it in the bin, and we're laughing, and we're just sitting in the train. And then this homeless guy comes, and he's going through the bins, and he pulls out my belt, and he picks it up, and this homeless guy puts on my I Belong Jehovah belt and walks off. So somewhere in Sydney, there's this homeless guy walking around with my belt, and we're thinking he's going to come into the truth, and he's going to say, "How did you come a witness?" He goes, "I found this belt in the bin at Sydney railway station."
Oh gosh, he'll be on a convention part. Oh.
How bad's that? So, yeah. So then we get the bus back to Melbourne. It's just like, yeah, never to be spoke of again. The gambling, stealing money.
That's probably one of the most fun trips anyone's ever had to Bethel.
Oh man, yeah, it was horrendous. Just
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you end up with many more stories in your new life that don't involve cult propaganda, and I hope that your kids, and your wife. I hope that you all just, truly. Live a beautiful life and enjoy it. This is the only one that anyone knows that we have for sure. So you might as well make the most of it, right?
True that, mate. True that. So I just want to say a big thank to you, mate. Like, honestly, if you ever, you don't realize that the impact you have on people, like that roadmap that you drew, like it's a well-worn, it's a path that it gives people to follow. And, like, I know that you don't make a big thing of it, but like, if you're not a Patreon member, get on board, man. Like you do such a good and helping people. And it's like you said, like, believe me, therapy is a lot more expensive than, so yeah, thanks again, mate. I really appreciate all the stuff. You probably don't realize that you have done, but yeah, big help in my life, mate. Really big help.
Well, thank you very much. I do get a lot of really beautiful messages from people, and it means a lot to me to hear that, when I put myself out there, it helped other people. And I'm sure there will be messages with you now putting yourself out there. The people that you help as well through this project. And I don't know. It's just people helping people, and it's beautiful. I do feel good about being able to help others. And, so I appreciate the kind words. I want to thank Matthew for sharing his story and for being so open about things. I know that doing this podcast is a big deal for Matthew. We've talked about it. It's a big deal for him to get some closure with this part of his life, and I hope you find it, buddy. We all seek closure in different ways, and it's nice to kind of sit down your story and leave it behind to the degree that you can. If you want to leave a comment of support for Matthew, you can do so at shunnedpodcast.com on the episodes page. You can also find resources and the song he chose to represent his journey there as well. And also in the podcast app by checking the description if you listen that way. Join us in the Facebook group called Shunned Podcast. Find more information on YouTube or Instagram or Twitter at Shunned Podcast. And I want to thank those that take time to leave reviews on iTunes for Shunned and This JW Life. For those that don't know, This JW Life is my first podcast. That was the series about my life. It's helped a lot of people to process their own stories. So if you haven't listened to it, give it a try and leave it a good review. We get trolls at times that try to lower the ratings on these. And so the more 5-star reviews we get, the more we can rise in the rankings and hopefully gain a wider audience to help get these stories out to the masses so that everyone understands what Jehovah's Witnesses go through. I also just want to say personally that I really do truly enjoy helping in all these ways, and I do care. If you're out there and you're hurting, please reach out. I know it's not always easy to invest in yourself or to be vulnerable. I know that we were taught to keep ourselves quiet and not to have needs and just kind of put our head down and push through, kind of like what we talked about in the episode a little bit. But I really want to see more people be able to lift their heads up and live a life they're proud of. If one-on-one coaching isn't something that you can do right now, then join the Shunned Recovery Group meetings that I host twice a week online. That information is on my shunnedpodcast.com website. I also post it in the Facebook group if you follow there. So you have options to find support, and you don't have to go through this alone. And please, if you can support what I'm doing and what I've got planned to grow this thing well beyond the podcast to help real people in their real daily lives, please go to patreon.com/shunned. And again, you don't have to donate a large amount. If we could do this at scale and had a lot of people donating, just a couple dollars a month would really, really make a world of difference. You have an opportunity to help do something good here. And if you follow me, you can watch it all grow. So I appreciate your time. The music for the podcast today is No Hell Yet by Fair Voyeur. Speaking of music, check out the Spotify playlist called Shunned Podcast for all the songs that have been chosen by the guests for each episode. I compiled all those, put them on Spotify. It's free to listen to. And it's a pretty cool mix of all kinds of different songs that have meant something to the journey of the people who've been on these episodes. And I add to it as I go, so it continues to grow. So until I see you next time, love others, do no harm, and go be happy.
We'll curse God.